Chapter 1074. Bang! In the depths of the Shilin mountain range, a muffled thump resounded across the horizon. At almost the same time, Yiluotian, who had been attacking Lang Bingshuang, was also blown back by this sudden attack. The ferocious and domineering force sent Yiluotian flying. The powerful force even forcefully broke the bones in his arm, while the blood in his body churned. In the blink of an eye, Yiluotian's figure had disappeared from this world. Only a muffled thump could be heard. It was clear that the latter had smashed into the mountain range in the distance. As for the exact situation, even Qin Shuo, who was present, had no idea. The sudden change in the battlefield caused everyone present to be instantly stunned. Numerous shocked gazes simultaneously landed on the black-robed figure who had suddenly appeared in front of them. When everyone saw the latter's handsome face, the shock in their hearts was even more irreplaceable. Xiao Yan raised his head and looked at the group of people in front of him. His extremely cold gaze paused on Qin Shuo, who was leading the group. The latter's heart immediately became cold. This black-robed young man in front of him actually gave him an unknown pressure. Subsequently, Xiao Yan's gaze turned and looked at the pale Lang Bingshuang behind him. When Xiao Yan bent down, Lang Bingshuang was also staring at Xiao Yan in shock. The shock in her heart was indescribable. Over the past few years, Lang Bingshuang had never heard of any trace of the latter. Back then, Xiao Yan had left for the western wastelands and never returned. She had even almost believed that the latter was dead. She never expected that Xiao Yan would suddenly appear at her most dangerous moment. Moreover, his strength seemed to have reached an extremely frightening level. Unfortunately, given her current condition, she was unable to detect the depth of Xiao Yan's aura. The bent Xiao Yan did not hesitate. With a flip of his hand, he retrieved a Tier 5 pill from his storage ring. Without waiting for Lang Bingshuang's consent, he directly stuffed it into her mouth. Immediately, a warm medicinal power immediately spread throughout Lang Bingshuang's body. The warm feeling that was transmitted from within her body caused Lang Bingshuang's nose to involuntarily emit a soft moan. The expression on Xiao Yan's face involuntarily froze. Lang Bingshuang also hurriedly turned her head. After which, Xiao Yan stood up. His eyes then looked towards Tianying's group, who had landed on the mountain peak in the distance. At this moment, the 5 of them were already seriously injured. However, their eyes were still filled with shock as they looked at Xiao Yan. Their eyes were filled with joy. Although they were unable to discern the depth of Xiao Yan's cultivation from the previous attack, with Xiao Yan present today, these people in the Qin Desolate Maze Valley were destined to be unable to do anything to them. This was a kind of trust, a trust towards Xiao Yan's strength. Under Lang Bingshuang's shocked gaze, Xiao Yan carried the latter's delicate body and placed her beside Sky Eagle and the rest. After which, he fed them elixirs before he once again flashed into the sky. His icy gaze once again looked towards Qin Shuo and the rest. "Brat, who are you?" With Qin Shuo's cultivation, he was naturally able to see through Xiao Yan's background with a single glance. The middle level of the origin transformation realm. It must be said that it was indeed very shocking for a young man to possess such a cultivation. However, it would be wishful thinking for Qin Shuo to rely on such a cultivation to deal with him. The difference between the origin transformation cultivators was as large as a chasm. Even if there was only a slight difference, it would be enough for him to crush his opponent, let alone when he was facing Xiao Yan, who was only at the mid-origin transformation realm. Xiao Yan. The instant the words left his mouth, Xiao Yan's figure immediately turned into a streak of light. He was as fast as lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared before Qin Shuo. A fist viciously smashed towards Qin Shuo's head. "You're Xiao Yan." Hearing this name, Qin Shuo was immediately shocked. He never would have thought that this so-called Xiao Yan was actually just a young man. Xiao Yan, since you've delivered yourself to me, I'll deal with you and Lang Bingshuang together today." Seeing Xiao Yan charge over, Qin Shuo did not back down. With a wave of his hands, 2 short spears appeared in his hands once more. With a flash, the sharp tips of the spears viciously stabbed towards Xiao Yan's head. The way the 2 of them fought with their lives on the line shocked the surrounding onlookers. However, in the next moment, Qin Shuo twisted his body. While the short spears continued to stab forward, they managed to avoid hitting his vitals. On the other hand, Xiao Yan did not dodge. When the short spear was shot over, the speed at which he attacked suddenly increased. At the same time, a ferocious heavenly flame, instantly gushed out with a puff sound and swiftly wrapped around his entire body. A frighteningly high temperature was immediately released. One could see that the short spear that was swiftly piercing toward Xiaoyan actually swiftly melted in front of the heavenly flame, at a speed visible to the naked eye. Almost at the same time, Xiaoyan's fist also suddenly trembled. From an extremely strange angle, it violently smashed into Qin Shua's chest. Bang! The ice spears melted and the Genesis Qi on them scattered. On the other hand, Qin Shua's fist-wrapped fist viciously smashed into his chest. The embroidered robes he wore instantly exploded into fragments that filled the air from front to back. The terrifying force forcefully shattered the bones in his chest, causing his entire face to instantly turn red. Subsequently, with a poochie sound, a large mouthful of blood was violently vomited. His muscular body uncontrollably flew backwards and smashed into the crowd behind him. When everyone focused their gazes, they saw that there was an inch-deep fist imprint on Qin Shua's chest. Fresh blood continuously gushed out around the bright red fist imprint. His face had also instantly turned deathly white and the aura in his body had become extremely chaotic. Quickly after, Xiaoyan moved once again, forcing his way into the crowd. Under everyone's horrified gazes, Xiaoyan punched one after another. In the short span of a few breaths, over a dozen Do-Di experts were completely annihilated by Xiaoyan. However, just as Xiaoyan was about to attack Qin Shua again, Yiluotan, who had originally been sent flying, suddenly appeared at some unknown point in time and forcefully pushed back Xiaoyan. By the time Xiaoyan returned to his senses, Yiluotan had already swiftly fled the area with Qin Shua. Soon after, Xiaoyan, who was originally about to give chase, was suddenly attracted by a cry of surprise from the mountain behind him. The instant he turned his head, he saw Lang Bingshuang, who had been resting after consuming a medicinal pill. For some unknown reason, a thin layer of ice had suddenly appeared on her lovely body, rapidly covering it at a speed that could be seen with the naked eye. As a result, Lang Bingshuang had fainted. Chapter 1075. Western Region, deep within the Shilin mountain range, at the bottom of a blazing volcano. Xiaoyan's expression was grave as he looked at Lang Bingshuang, whose entire body was covered by a layer of solid ice. His heart was incomparably anxious. He did not expect that in order to deal with Qin Shua, Lang Bingshuang would actually use such an extreme method to raise her own strength. The latter's action was no different from committing suicide. After a simple investigation, Xiaoyan clearly discovered that there was actually a small piece of ice crystal within Lang Bingshuang's body. The reason for her current state was also because of that ice crystal. That piece of ice crystal was no ordinary ice. It was an extreme cold ice soul. In order to be able to obtain sufficient strength in a short period of time, Lang Bingshuang had actually forcefully obtained an extreme cold ice soul from the icy spirit cold spring and swallowed it into her body. This also led to the latter's current state. Endless cold energy uncontrollably spread out. The powerful energy allowed Lang Bingshuang to possess a frightening one-sided battle strength when fighting against Qin Shua. However, at the same time, the spreading of the cold energy within her body also affected her internal organs and bones in the shortest amount of time. Under Xiaoyan's investigation, the cold ice had already covered a large portion of Lang Bingshuang's internal organs. Extremely cold temperatures were continuously being released and the life within her body was disappearing at an extremely fast rate. Currently, the cold ice that wrapped around Lang Bingshuang's body was nothing much. However, the most important thing was the extreme cold ice soul within her body. If the cold energy within was allowed to continue spreading, it was likely that even with Lang Bingshuang's cultivation, it would be very difficult for her to survive. Due to their respective injuries, Tian Ying and the rest did not follow Xiaoyan into this place. Hence, at this moment, only Xiaoyan and Lang Bingshuang were at the bottom of this cave. Puff! Without any hesitation, Xiaoyan extended his hand and waved. Pale blue flames immediately gushed out. The raging flames immediately covered the layer of ice on the surface of Lang Bingshuang's body. A terrifyingly high temperature was also released. Immediately, the originally solid layer of ice rapidly melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. Only when Lang Bingshuang's delicate body was once again exposed to the air did the heavenly flame quietly dissipate. Although the ice layer was broken, it could not solve the problem. Xiaoyan, who was well aware of this, did not have any hesitation. Then, he pointed out two fingers and touched Lang Bingshuang's forehead. A small flame ignited. The blue flame released a scorching temperature and invaded Lang Bingshuang's body, protecting her mind from being invaded by the cold air. Then, Xiaoyan made a series of moves. After a little flame on his hands and feet, he turned his gaze back to Lang Bingshuang's proud body. Looking at the delicate body in front of him, Xiaoyan frowned. His face could not help but reveal a difficult expression. He knew that this woman was not to be trifled with. Last time, she had almost taken his life. If she were to do it again, it would be very difficult for her to let him off. Thinking of this, Xiaoyan could not help but clench his teeth and frown as he pondered. Now, even saving her had become a big problem. After a long while, Xiaoyan, who saw the ice on Lang Bingshuang's delicate body once again, finally made up his mind. Saving her was the most important thing. Moreover, Lang Bingshuang had saved his life before. Even if they had already settled the score, with Xiaoyan's character, it was impossible for him to not save the latter. Sorry, I have no choice but to do this. Clenching his teeth, Xiaoyan stretched out his right hand, bent his 5 fingers, and landed on Lang Bingshuang's lower abdomen. Immediately, a refreshing ice-cold aura gushed out like a fountain, rushing straight to Xiaoyan's palm. Feeling this sudden energy impact, Xiaoyan's face suddenly changed. With a thought, a ferocious flame suddenly surged out, covering his entire palm. Then, at the fingertips of his 5 fingers and the center of his palm, it split into 6 scorching energy auras and poured into Lang Bingshuang's body. The 6 energies quickly spread to the various meridians in Lang Bingshuang's body. From small to large, at an extremely fast speed, they expelled the cold energy that was distributed throughout her body. Finally, it was her internal organs. The entire process of expelling the cold energy lasted for a full 4 hours. During the entire process, not only did he have to consider the strength of the distribution of the cold energy, he also had to consider the condition of Lang Bingshuang's body. After all, the latter still had injuries on her body. Even with the recovery of a level 5 medicinal pill, if he was not careful, there was still the possibility of leaving behind injuries. In addition, because Lang Bingshuang's attribute was also ice, when expelling the cold energy, Xiaoyan had to be even more careful. Otherwise, it was possible that Lang Bingshuang's body would be injured. If her cultivation was affected, even if the latter could recover, she would hate him to the bones. After that, it was time for the extreme Arctic ice soul. The extreme Arctic ice soul itself contained an extremely dense cold energy. If the cold energy was used properly, it would naturally become a miraculous elixir that could help raise one's cultivation. However, if it was not controlled, or if it was consumed in excess, then it would very likely become a lethal weapon. Lang Bingshuang had obviously consumed too much of it. With her current cultivation, it was impossible for her to completely refine it. The only way now was to disperse the cold energy contained in the extreme Arctic ice soul as much as possible, then use the heavenly flame to slowly refine it. As for this process, it was likely to be extremely long. However, for Xiaoyan, this was undoubtedly the safest way. Thinking of doing it, with Lang Bingshuang's current situation, there was not much of a choice. Subsequently, Xiaoyan withdrew his palm. At the same time, the cold energy that was sealed in Lang Bingshuang's body was once again released. Waves of strong cold energy rapidly spread out, and the little color that had recovered on Lang Bingshuang's pretty face also quickly faded. Subsequently, Xiaoyan stretched out his hands and placed them flat on Lang Bingshuang's lower abdomen and below her neck. Waves of blazing energy were released from his palms and surged into Lang Bingshuang's body, beginning to refine the cold energy that was trying to continue spreading. He wanted to use a long period of time to completely exhaust the cold energy in the extreme Arctic ice soul. However, this time, just as Xiaoyan was preparing to refine the cold energy, a strange suction force suddenly surged out from the vortex in Lang Bingshuang's body. At the same time, the cold energy that was spreading out from the extreme Arctic ice soul suddenly seemed to be attracted by something, and uncontrollably rushed towards the center of the vortex in Lang Bingshuang's body. Almost at the same time, Lang Bingshuang's delicate body also rapidly cooled down. Her originally white skin looked even more sparkling at this moment. Sensing this, Xiaoyan hurriedly withdrew his hands. Lowering his head to look at his 2 icy cold palms, he suddenly felt a wave of shock in his heart. Immediately, Xiaoyan lifted his eyes and saw waves of extremely cold energy spreading out from Lang Bingshuang's body. The energy within the extreme Arctic ice soul was also rapidly being absorbed. Strange icy blue lines also surfaced on Lang Bingshuang's arms. The moment Xiao Yan saw those lines, the expression on his face suddenly changed. This is Extreme Yin Body. Chapter 1076. The Extreme Yin Body was similar to the Woeful Poison Body. It was a special body constitution that was extremely rare in the world. Its attribute was on the cold side, and once it was activated, it could trigger the power of heaven and earth. It was said that wherever the Extreme Yin Body appeared, heaven and earth would be frozen, and everything within 10,000 miles would be white. However, wherever the Extreme Yin Body went, heaven and earth would also be frozen. Winter snow would dance everywhere, and the world would become a white purgatory. Without mentioning anything else, just the fact that it was equally famous as the Woeful Poison Body was enough to cause countless people to be alarmed. The situation that Lang Bingshuang was currently displaying was exactly the same as the description of the Extreme Yin Body in the legends. Damn it, why does this woman have such a ghostly physique? Xiao Yan's expression became a little ugly when he saw the extreme cold ice soul within Lang Bingshuang's body being swallowed by the latter at an extremely fast speed. He would not believe that the Extreme Yin Body was comparable to the Woeful Poison Body if it did not have some terrifying aspects. However, the problem was that this woman seemed to be about to wake up. Buzz! The instant Xiao Yan's exclamation sounded, Lang Bingshuang's originally tightly shut beautiful eyes suddenly opened at this moment. At the same time, her ice-cold delicate body also suddenly stood up. An extremely icy aura also swept out at the same time. The icy aura instantly caused the temperature within the cave to drop. Even the magma that was continuously churning a moment ago also involuntarily calmed down, as if it had been frozen. At the same time, Xiao Yan hurriedly raised his head and looked. His heart immediately turned cold. Indeed, Lang Bingshuang's pair of beautiful eyes were completely pale at this moment. There was not the slightest bit of spirit in them. The indifferent expression on her pretty face was extremely cold. The most frightening thing was that this woman was currently staring intently at Xiao Yan, as if she wanted to kill the latter for his disrespectful actions earlier. Sensing the killing intent in Lang Bingshuang's ice-cold eyes, Xiao Yan felt a chill down his spine. At the same time, Lang Bingshuang's delicate body trembled. In the blink of an eye, she had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Without any hesitation, she raised her jade-like hand and an extremely cold ice instantly covered her slender palm. Then, she viciously slapped Xiao Yan's face. This woman. What a terrifying reading speed. Xiao Yan had always known the horror of Lang Bingshuang, but it was not until this moment that he truly felt the tyrannical strength of the other party after witnessing the latter's terrifying speed. Fortunately, this guy did not have any strange means, otherwise, Xiao Yan would really have a hard time dealing with him. At the same time as his expression changed, Xiao Yan's figure also rapidly retreated. His feet stomped heavily on the ground, and his body leaned back slightly. Only then did he manage to narrowly avoid Lang Bingshuang's slap. Hiss! Although he dodged Lang Bingshuang's jade-like hand, the extremely cold wind still left a few shallow bloodstains on Xiao Yan's face. Then, without waiting for Xiao Yan to stabilize his body, Lang Bingshuang actually followed up and slapped Xiao Yan's abdomen. Although Xiao Yan still managed to dodge this blow with his extraordinary speed, the jade-like hand still slipped through Xiao Yan's crotch. The cold wind immediately caused Xiao Yan's lower body to tighten and his scalp to go numb. After that, in the face of Lang Bingshuang's attack, Xiao Yan did not dare to slack off in the slightest. He was afraid that this crazy woman would do something terrible with her slap. In the face of the latter's endless attacks, Xiao Yan continuously attacked and received all of Lang Bingshuang's attacks. After that, Lang Bingshuang even released the Great Tao of Frost. 20 ice mirrors were released at the same time, surrounding Xiao Yan from all directions. Waves of sharp energy wind constantly rushed towards Xiao Yan. If not for the Great Tao of Void, even Xiao Yan would have suffered quite a bit of damage from it. With the flow of time, Xiao Yan was shocked to discover that the cave under the volcano had unknowingly been completely sealed by ice. This was not only limited to the 4 walls of the cave, but also the originally churning magma. The hot fire glow had long since disappeared. Instead, it was a kind of dark coal-like black color. The entire surface of the magma had basically been completely cooled. Moreover, with the increasing thickness of the cold ice that covered the cave, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have nowhere to retreat if this continued. At that time, he would really be in trouble. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. The manifestation of Lang Bingshuang's extreme yin had now erupted. Although the energy contained in the extreme cold ice soul was no longer a concern, the current Lang Bingshuang was even more dangerous than before. Even Xiaoyan himself could not avoid being surrounded by danger. If he wanted to resolve all this danger, he had to stop Lang Bingshuang at this moment. But, thinking of a certain point in his heart, Xiaoyan could not help but hesitate. That kind of result was probably not something that he could bear. Or perhaps, it was not something that Lang Bingshuang could bear. According to the records in the ancient books that Xiaoyan had read in the past, since ancient times, the appearance of the extreme yin body was extremely rare. Moreover, every time it appeared, it was in the female group. This might be due to the innate coldness of the female body. However, regardless of which aspect one looked at, the strength of the extreme yin body was obvious to all. However, since ancient times, there had never been any method to control the special constitution of the extreme yin body. It should be known that even if it was a terrifying woeful poison body, the ancient books more or less had some methods to deal with it. However, the extreme yin body was something that no one in the world could do anything about. Of course, this did not mean that there was no method to deal with it just because the ancient books did not have it. Xiaoyan once remembered that when he had mentioned this matter to Yao Lao back then, Yao Lao had once said that the essence of the extreme yin body was caused by the excessive yin and cold force. It was also divided into innate and acquired. An innate body was innate to the yin and cold force, but its constitution would have an incubation period. It could be a few years or it could be a lifetime. As for an acquired body, it was caused by the accumulation of yin and cold force over a long period of time. Once an acquired extreme yin body was formed, there would no longer be any method to make up for it. However, Yao Lao had personally refuted this definite answer. Since the extreme yin body was caused by the overabundance of dark and cold energy, as long as a person with an extremely strong and fierce physique copulated with it, logically speaking, there would be a high chance of success. Of course, since ancient times, there was no lack of people who attempted to do so. Unfortunately, forget about copulation, it was extremely difficult for an ordinary expert to even approach a person with an extreme yin body. Even if they were able to forcefully approach, most of them would be unable to endure due to the overabundance of dark and cold energy surrounding the latter's body. After which, they would be ruthlessly killed by a person with an extreme yin body. However, Xiaoyan was an exception amongst all of this. After hesitating for quite a while, Xiaoyan returned to his senses. He discovered that there was only a few dozen meters of space between him and Lang Bingshuang. At the same time, Lang Bingshuang had completely absorbed the extreme chilling ice soul. The presence she gave off was actually terrifyingly powerful. She was only a step away from returnance. If he could not control her now, it would really be too late. God damn it. I promise you that I will take responsibility for you until the end. Xiaoyan quietly cursed in his heart. In the end, he clenched his teeth in a vicious manner. A thought passed through his mind and the three-elephant skill was instantly displayed. At the same time, a fierce flame instantly wrapped around his body. After which, he firmly grabbed Lang Bingshuang's hand, which was once again attacking him in his palm. At the same time, his other hand violently waved. An invisible force instantly tore apart the icy blue long dress that was wrapped around Lang Bingshuang's lovely body. Chapter 1077. Bang! Following a muffled explosion, ice fragments flew in all directions and the entire cave trembled. The aftermath of the explosion reverberated endlessly within the cave, causing waves of buzzing sounds to reverberate within the cave. A human figure flashed in the depths of the cave, continuously easily dodging the icicles that were attacking him. At the same time, the thick layer of ice that filled the entire cave also began to gradually peel off. The magma that was sealed under the ice also gradually regained some vitality at this moment. Die! Within the cave, only a delicate cry that was filled with killing intent was heard. Several icicles that were filled with a piercing chill once again shot forward, ruthlessly piercing towards the black-robed young man. In response to this, the black-robed young man merely twisted his body and easily dodged all of them. Soon after, the icicles once again broke apart the thick layer of ice behind him. Seeing that her attack was actually dodged so easily, the woman's exhausted pretty face once again revealed an expression of shame and anger. Dragging her tired delicate body, she took a step forward with her pair of stunningly beautiful legs in pain and charged towards the black-robed young man. However, immediately after, the woman's delicate body suddenly went limp and she powerlessly fell to the ground. However, the black-robed man's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. His body suddenly flashed and he instantly appeared in front of the woman. Both of his hands extended and once again landed on the woman's smooth, delicate body. At the same time, he supported her up. "Let go of this king." The roar that was filled with rage was somewhat hoarse. A pair of ice-blue beautiful eyes were completely red at this moment. With a twist of her jade-like hand, an icicle immediately condensed in her palm and ruthlessly pierced towards the chest of the black-robed young man in front of her. Crack! However, the instant the icicle pierced through the black robe and made contact with the black-robed young man's chest, it was as if it had struck an iron wall and instantly shattered. The woman's slender and delicate hand instead landed on the black-robed young man's warm chest as if she was caressing it. The sudden icy cold feeling caused the heart of the black-robed young man to suddenly tighten. His hands, which were supporting the woman, subconsciously withdrew. The woman's soft and delicate body immediately pressed tightly against the black-robed young man's chest. The exquisite skin and softness to the touch caused the black-robed young man's entire body to tremble. Even though he had already understood the gentleness and beauty of this delicate body, touching it once again at this moment caused the impression in his heart to deepen. Almost at the same time, the pretty nose of the woman in his embrace could not help but let out a lovely snort. The warm breath exhaled from her pretty nose caused the heart of the black-robed young man to surge. Hiss! In the next moment, the woman actually used what little strength she had left to open her alluring lips and fiercely bite the man's chest. As if he was afraid of hurting the woman in his arms, the black-robed young man did not use any strength from the beginning to the end. He allowed the boiling blood to stick to the woman's red lips, making her look even more alluring. The black-robed young man, on the other hand, gritted his teeth and persisted. "Xiaoyan, when I recover, I will definitely kill you." Suddenly, the tears in the beautiful eyes of the woman in his embrace finally gushed out unwillingly. The tears dripped onto Xiaoyan's chest. The trace of coldness and the strange itchiness when the tears fell did not make Xiaoyan let go of the woman in his embrace. Instead, he wrapped his arms behind him and hugged the woman's delicate body even more tightly into his embrace. "I'm sorry, in that situation, if I didn't do anything, then your extreme body would very likely completely erupt. At that time, no one would be able to suppress it. You don't need to care about that. I just want to save you." "You're not worthy." The woman in his embrace shouted out these three hoarse words with shame and indignation, and Xiaoyan also became silent because of this. "Then what do you think I should do to be worthy?" After being silent for a long while, Xiaoyan suddenly lowered his head and clenched his teeth. A pale blue flame rose in the depths of his pair of pitch-black eyes. He stared intently at the soft woman in his embrace, and there was a domineering and gentle anger in his eyes. When Lang Bingshuang heard Xiaoyan's words, her entire person was suddenly stunned. Especially when she noticed Xiaoyan's eyes, the bottom of her heart could not help but tremble. Her red lips that were stained with blood opened slightly, but she did not spit out a word. Instead, a faint fishy sweet taste entered her mouth. Ugh! Immediately, under Lang Bingshuang's shocked gaze, Xiaoyan suddenly lowered his head and sucked on the former's delicate red lips. Ignoring the other party's struggle, he forcefully kissed her. It was a long while later that Xiaoyan finally separated from the former. His fierce gaze was still staring at Lang Bingshuang in his embrace. The domineering gaze actually caused Lang Bingshuang's heart to jump wildly, and the thoughts in her mind had yet to recover from the shocking kiss just now. Huff! Xiaoyan inhaled a deep breath of air. After which, when the woman in his embrace recovered, he once again opened his mouth and said in a deep voice, "If you think that only a man who is stronger than you is qualified to be your husband, then I will use my strength to conquer you now." After saying those words, the man did not wait for Lang Bingshuang to open her mouth to argue. The man's body directly pushed the woman in his embrace down. Under the latter's sharp exclamation, the man overbearingly and mercilessly tore apart the long dress that the woman was wearing again. In the next moment, the interior of the cave was overflowing with spring. The two of them only left the bottom of the volcano at noon the next day with different expressions. When the two of them appeared in the outside world, the little fairy doctor and the rest, who were led by the Northern King, had already arrived. They were waiting for Xiaoyan to appear. Xiaoyan's appearance naturally attracted the attention of the group of elite Dou Di. Immediately, the group respectfully bowed to Xiaoyan. "Chief!" A voice that was filled with an imposing aura reverberated unceasingly within this mountain range. Xiaoyan nodded his head with a solemn expression when he heard this. Tianying and the others by the side had already recovered by half with the help of Xiaoyan's Tier 5 medicinal pills. Although their auras were still weak, They were able to move on their own. When they discovered this group of people, they had nearly thought that Qin Shua's group had come to attack again. It was only at this moment that they saw the attitude of this group of people toward Xiao Yan. Only then did they understand in their hearts that this group of people was actually the experts that Xiao Yan had brought with him. At the same time that they understood this point, the few of them involuntarily felt a shock in their hearts. After not seeing each other for a couple of years, it was unexpected that the Xiao Yan in front of them was far from the Xiao Yan that they knew back then. Not only was his cultivation frighteningly powerful, but he also possessed his own faction. It was really a case of a scholar being looked at in a different light after 3 days apart. However, while most of the people's gazes were gathered on Xiao Yan suddenly discovered that the little fairy doctor's eyes had unknowingly made contact with Lang Bingshuang, whose pretty face was indifferent. Immediately, a bad premonition swiftly rose within Xiao Yan's heart. Chapter 1078. In the depths of the Shilin mountain range, Xiao Yan's figure stood proudly on a mountain peak. Beside him was the alluring Lang Bingshuang. Her delicate face was expressionless, but there were traces of resentment in her eyes as she glanced at the black-robed young man beside her from time to time. The little fairy doctor and the rest were also silently standing in front of Xiao Yan. Several dozen gazes landed on Xiao Yan's body in unison, their eyes filled with respect. After witnessing the terrifying speed Xiao Yan had displayed that day, the black-robed young man's weight in their hearts had abruptly increased. His speed was far too frightening. In fact, it was much faster than the Northern King they had seen before. It was very difficult to imagine that he was only an intermediate origin transformation stage expert. It was no wonder that he had been able to kill Qin Su. Without sufficient strength, it would be very difficult for an ordinary person to accomplish such a feat subsequently. Xiao Yan entrusted Tianying to lead the 30-plus Dodi experts into his cave dwelling to rest. With Xiao Yan leading the way, Tianying was naturally much more courteous to these people. The group quickly left, leaving behind only Xiao Yan, Lang Bingshuang and 3 others. The other 2 were naturally the little fairy doctor and Kai. Ever since Kai started following the little fairy doctor, although she rarely spoke, her every action was in accordance with the little fairy doctor's thoughts. In just a few short months, the tacit understanding between the 2 of them had increased to an extremely terrifying level. Kai could naturally sense the strange atmosphere between the little fairy doctor and Lang Bingshuang. Her expression immediately darkened as she stared at Lang Bingshuang with hostility surging from the depths of her eyes. At the same time, the powerful Genesis Qi in her body began to circulate. Xiao Yan suddenly extended his hand just as Kai was about to flare up. He grabbed Kai wrist, and the latter immediately recovered. Her respectful eyes immediately looked at Xiao Yan in front of her. A respectful expression surfaced in her pretty eyes. "Master." Kai lowered her head and timidly called out. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan frowned and nodded. Soon after he said in a low voice, "Kai, your current cultivation isn't any weaker than mine, but your temperament is still shallow, so I can't teach you too much. I can only tell you that people live for themselves. Before you do anything, you have to think clearly about the purpose of doing it, and why you are doing it. People can't always be immersed in the past. You still have a long way to go in the future. I don't want you to be depressed like this, and your brother also doesn't want you to become like this." "Big brother." Upon hearing Xiao Yan's words, Kai's eyes immediately brightened. A familiar figure appeared in her mind's mind. But, although the latter had already passed, her brothers chose to her. To time, of course. It was a long while later before a layer of faint fog suddenly surged into Kai's lifeless eyes. After which, she spoke to Xiao Yan before leaving on her own. Xiao Yan also watched Kai's back as she left. Only a moment later did he recover. His expression was complicated as he looked at the 2 people in front of him. Now that Kai's matter was barely resolved, the matter between the 2 women in front of him was really difficult to deal with. Sigh. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He had saved the fire of others, but it was difficult to settle the trouble he had caused. At this moment, the 2 women were staring at each other with their beautiful, sparkling eyes. The invisible confrontation caused the atmosphere in the air to become more and more anxious. This was a war without smoke. There was no wind and no waves, but it was like a stormy sea. Xiao Yan couldn't help but sigh bitterly in his heart. Sigh. Xiao Yan repeatedly sighed in his heart. It was a long while later before he gathered his courage and took a step between the 2 of them, blocking their line of sight. However, Just as Xiao Yan thought that this would be able to end this battle, the originally calm two people actually lifted their hands in a ghost-like manner as though they had agreed beforehand. In front of Xiao Yan's shocked and terrified gaze, the two of them, "Pa!" Both palms rang out, and the clear and loud sound of a slap reverberated on the mountain peak. Xiao Yan's face instantly became distorted. His eyes widened, and there was a look of disbelief. The inexplicable attack caused Xiao Yan to be stunned. He actually couldn't recover for a long time. No matter what, he didn't expect that the two women would actually attack him in such a strange manner. Moreover, the speed and viciousness of the attack seemed to have been rehearsed countless times. It must be said that the tacit understanding between women was really so strange that it was frightening. After which, the two women once again became quiet. After exchanging glances with each other, they prepared to leave. It was also at this moment that a human figure did indeed fly over at an extremely fast speed from the distant mountain range. At the same time, the gazes of the three people on the mountain peak were also attracted over at the same time. Within a short couple of minutes, that human figure appeared in front of Xiao Yan's group. The person who had come was a middle-aged man. His cultivation was that of an intermediate 7-star Do-D. He was wearing a yellow robe, and there was a special badge on his chest that had the word Gu carved on it. This was the symbol of the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. This person was someone from the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. Killing intent immediately flashed across Lang Bingshuang's pretty face the moment she recognized this person. Xiao Yan stopped Lang Bingshuang, who was about to attack. Although the killing intent in the latter's heart did not diminish, for some unknown reason, it actually retreated. Although she was filled with hatred towards the person who had taken her body, she ultimately couldn't bring herself to kill him. Killing intent had just risen in her heart when it mysteriously dissipated. In fact, when facing Xiao Yan, she actually lost control of the Genesis Qi in her body. As for the little fairy doctor, she didn't know the identity of the person who had come and naturally couldn't feel any enmity. Moreover, given her current cultivation level, she couldn't do anything even if she had any enmity. As for the person who had come, he seemed to already have a target. He wasn't here for the master of the Shilin mountain range, Lang Bingshuang. Instead, he was here for the young man in black robes at the front of the trio. The yellow-robed person stood 100 feet away from the trio. He didn't say anything and instead shot a jade strip at Xiao Yan from afar. When he confirmed that the jade strip had landed in Xiao Yan's hands, he turned around and fled without any hesitation. Die! However, the moment the yellow-robed person turned around, Lang Bingshuang, who was behind Xiao Yan, suddenly attacked. She threw a palm through the air. Carrying the suppressed fury in her heart, she instantly killed the yellow-robed person. Xiao Yan involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva when he saw this scene. A chill appeared on his back. Chapter 1079. On the cliff, Xiao Yan involuntarily shrunk his neck when he saw Lang Bingshuang slap the yellow-robed man to death. Subsequently, he hurriedly picked up the jade strip in his hand when Lang Bingshuang shot a cold glare at him. Soon after, Xiao Yan injected a sliver of energy into the jade strip. The information contained within the jade strip appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the other two. What appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the other two was an image. The figures in the image were Qin Shua and Yi Luotian, who had fled not long ago. When they saw the two of them, Xiao Yan and Lang Bingshuang's expressions immediately darkened. When the little fairy doctor saw this, a trace of enmity also flashed across her pretty face. Just from the image alone, Xiao Yan could clearly sense that the injuries on the two of them seemed to have recovered significantly. It was likely that they had used quite a number of high-tier medicinal pills. The purpose of this image was likely to create a certain amount of psychological pressure on Xiao Yan. Unfortunately, these things were completely useless against Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, I truly did not expect that you have actually grown to such an extent in just a few short years. This is truly astonishing. In the image, Yi Luotian revealed a sinister smile. His venomous eyes seemed to really be waiting for Xiao Yan. Even though this gaze did not contain any substance, it still caused one's heart to tighten. It was as if there was an invisible blade at one's throat. In response, Xiao Yan and the other two directly ignored this. They were not afraid of this invisible threat at all. Soon after, the silk-robed Qin Shua in the image spoke. Xiao Yan and Lang Bingshuang. Good. All of you have finally gathered. Just you wait. 10 days later, it will be the time of your deaths. His gloomy voice was filled with endless killing intent, and his eyes were filled with malevolence. It was as if he had already seen the miserable defeat of Xiaoyan and the others 10 days later. Kik, Xiaoyan, we'll be waiting for you at Shahipu in 10 days. If you don't come, we'll lead all the forces in the western region and flatten the Shilin mountain range. Let's see where you can hide then. At the end of the video, Yilotan once again let out a sinister laugh, while icy killing intent involuntarily flashed across the faces of Xiaoyan and the rest. This fellow was completely using the entire Shilin mountain range as a wager to threaten them. Boom! When the image in front of him ended, Xiaoyan randomly crushed the jade token in his hand. After which, he slowly raised his head. His gaze looked at the distant sky. The corner of his mouth was lifted into an arc as he coldly said, "You are right." The corners of his mouth curled up as he coldly said, "Yilotan, Ghost Hall, send out the order. 10 days later, we'll meet Shahipu." Xiaoyan immediately turned around after his words sounded. However, the smile on his face suddenly stiffened in the next moment. He saw that the two women behind him were staring at him with icy cold eyes without moving. Those icy cold eyes caused one's heart to feel a chill. Naturally, there was no one to convey the order from his mouth. Ugh! Xiaoyan was stunned. His heart immediately felt a little stupefied. He opened his mouth, but was unable to spit out a single word. His entire body was rooted to the ground like a piece of wood. It was a long while later before the two women in front of him snorted coldly, turned around and left. Only then did Xiaoyan's suspended heart finally relax. A couple of hours later, Xiaoyan and the upper echelons of Xiao Gate were seated within Sky Eagle's cave. At this moment, everyone's expressions were simultaneously grave. After being informed by the little fairy doctor, they were already aware of the battle with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley 10 days later. Currently, they were most worried about the true strength of the other party. The Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was an old faction in the western region, and was once known as the overlord of the western region. Its foundation was naturally not to be underestimated. Yi Luotian had gathered the 4 great sects and naturally had quite a number of experts under him. If these two joined hands, their strength would be enough to sweep through the entire western region. Based on Sky Eagle's understanding of these two, there were likely over 50 elite Do Di under the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. The number of Ban Di experts was even more difficult to estimate. Just this point alone was something that the current Xiao Gate could not compare with. However, if that was all, it would be fine. After all, just the number of origin transformation experts on the Xiao sect side, including Lang Bingshuang, amounted to 4. They had 2 more origin transformation experts than the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. If this was the case, as long as there were 2 of them remaining, even if there were 50 elite Do Di in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, they would still be able to easily suppress them. After all, the so-called elite Do Di was nothing in front of an origin transformation expert. Unfortunately, just when everyone believed that this battle would not be a problem, Lang Bingshuang's pretty ice-cold face suddenly opened her mouth and revealed the fact that there were still 2 origin transformation experts in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Everyone present was immediately shocked when these words were uttered. Even Xiaoyan's expression changed. Other people might be unaware, but he clearly understood that Yi Luotian had colluded with the Ghost Hall. In the battle 10 days later, the people from the Ghost Hall would definitely head out and attack him. Their goal was to capture him. At that time, it was likely that the Ghost Hall would take out at least 2 origin transformation experts. Originally, Xiaoyan thought that if this was the case, the 4 of them would still be able to fight. However, if the other party still had 2 origin transformation experts, if the other party were to suddenly take out 2 origin transformation experts in a 4-against-4 situation, they would definitely be able to turn the situation around in an instant. At the same time, the people from Xiao Gate side would definitely be affected. The battle situation would become even more dangerous. The originally disadvantageous situation would only cause them to lose any chance of victory. Hence, if Xiaoyan wanted to defeat the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, the only method was to find other helpers. However, there were only a few origin transformation experts in the entire western region. Where would he find any helpers? However, just when Xiaoyan was feeling slightly anxious, his gaze inadvertently glanced at Tianying's group. More accurately, it should be the scaled serpent among them. The moment he saw the latter, Xiaoyan seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His eyes immediately brightened and a glint of light flashed through the depths of his eyes. If he remembered correctly, there might be other origin transformation experts in the western region. Xiao Yan clearly remembered that he had once sensed the aura of an origin transformation expert in that place. Now that he thought about it, he had been extremely lucky back then. Chapter 1080. Afterwards, under Xiao Yan's lead, Lang Bingshuang and the rest of Tianying's group arrived in front of a natural lake. The azure sky, the calm lake, and the endless mountain forest. The natural colors caused this area to appear especially beautiful. In particular, the layer of faint fog that floated on the surface of the lake caused this place to appear like a fairyland. When the group arrived at this place, Lang Bingshuang, who was behind Xiao Yan, and Lin Shi, who was among the 5 people from Sky Eagle, immediately recognized this place. This place was the narwhal snake's nest. At the same time, it was also the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins. Why have we come here? I don't think there will be anything at the bottom of the lake. Lang Bingshuang glanced at the lake in front of her doubtfully. She was filled with doubts. She could not sense anything at the bottom of the lake with her aura. Even though there were still some signs of magical beasts, it did not prove that there was anything special about this place. As for the ruins, they had already closed many years ago, so it was even more impossible for her to think of them. Big Brother Xiao, are you thinking of? On the other hand, the scaled snake had once entered the ruins, so he clearly understood how terrifying it was. If he wanted to get help, the fellow inside would be a very good helper. Yes, I want to try and see if I can open the ruins again. If it's possible, I think we should be able to get another origin transformation expert. Xiao Yan grinned when he heard that. He clearly remembered the strength of the aura he had sensed in the desolate ancient ruins. It was an existence that he could not compare to back then. Back then, Xiao Yan had immediately confirmed that the person was an origin transformation expert through Gu Yu's words. As a result, if they could open the desolate ancient ruins again and successfully obtain the help of that person, their group would gain another origin transformation expert. The expressions of the people behind him immediately changed when they heard that. Even Lu Jin, Fang Tonghui, and the others revealed expressions of disbelief. Even the little fairy doctor and Kai, a revealed surprise on their faces. On the other hand, Lang Bingshuang frowned and coldly said, "Are you crazy? Usually, the seals of ancient ruins are special. It is impossible for outsiders to open them. If you forcefully open them, you will only be injured by the backlash of the energy contained within the seal. Even if you can barely open them, how confident are you in being able to enter and exit as you please?" Everyone present turned their gazes to Lang Bingshuang in the face of this sudden cold cry. After which, they swept their gazes back and forth between Xiao Yan and the 2 of them. Their hearts were stunned. This was especially the case when everyone saw the smile on the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth. A vague guess rose in their hearts. A bright redness immediately flashed across Lang Bingshuang's pretty face when she sensed everyone's gazes shooting over. Shock surged in the eyes of Tianying's group when they saw this. Immediately, the few of them quietly exchanged glances with each other before they immediately quietened down. Amongst everyone, only the little fairy doctor remained unmoved. However, her pair of eyes, which flickered with a complicated expression, continued to stare intently at Xiao Yan. She did not let him off even for a moment. "Are you concerned about me?" At this moment, Xiao Yan's mouth suddenly uttered such words. Immediately, an invisible storm exploded in the minds of Tianying's group. The few of them looked at each other in shock. After which, their eyes instantly turned to Lang Bingshuang. The result was as they had expected in their hearts. It was unusually abnormal. If it was according to Lang Bingshuang's character in the past, it was likely that someone would have been slapped by her if he dared to joke with her in such a manner. However, today, not only was Lang Bingshuang not angered after Xiao Yan spoke these words, her pretty face turned slightly red as she turned her head and ignored the former. This scene was really hard for them not to think about. On the other hand, Lu Jin's group smiled as they looked at Xiao Yan. After which, Xiao Yan ceased joking. He turned around and his gaze landed on the lake in front of him. Honestly speaking, even he did not have any confidence in being able to open the desolate ancient remains. After all, even with his spiritual strength, he could only sense the existence of the remains. As for opening it, that was even more unimaginable. However, the harder it was to imagine, the more Xiao Yan wanted to personally try. After all, no matter what it was, if one did not try, one would never know if one was able to do it. Seeing that Xiao Yan was about to make a move, a look of hesitation flashed across the scaled serpent's face. It opened its mouth, but the words that were about to come out of its mouth were swallowed back. At the same time, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind. The surging spiritual strength between his brows immediately surged out. The vast and mighty spiritual strength was just like a tsunami as it swept over the entire place. The faces of everyone behind him instantly revealed shocked expressions. Such a frightening spiritual strength was really unimaginable. Soon after, the vast and mighty spiritual strength agglomerated into two invisible large hands under Xiao Yan's control. They forcefully tore apart the lake in front of him. The lake water tumbled. Under the surface of the lake, a faintly discernible force began to resist the two invisible hands. From time to time, they collided with each other, causing the tumbling lake water to explode violently. Before the lake water could fall, it was swept away by an invisible wave of energy, rushing towards the people outside the lake. In response, Lang Bingshuang just casually waved her hand, and the water droplets and invisible waves dissipated. As the two invisible hands clashed with the invisible energy under the lake, the crowd was finally able to see the outside of the restriction. A scarlet-red energy barrier stretched across the lake's surface. From a distance, one could see a huge scarlet-red energy halo. It was the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins. Seeing this scene, everyone behind him had a surprised expression on their faces. Before this scene appeared, they had not sensed any strange aura in this place at all. In front of the crowd, Lang Bingshuang frowned as she watched the entrance to the ruins slowly appear. Her heart involuntarily tightened, and the Genesis Qi in her body quietly began to circulate. As Xiao Yan's spiritual strength continued to attack, the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins became increasingly clear in front of everyone's eyes. Even so, no matter how hard Xiao Yan tried, the entrance showed no signs of opening. Not even the tiniest crack appeared. "Damn it!" Xiao Yan quietly said in his heart. He poured his spiritual strength into the two invisible large hands in an even greater frenzy. A moment later, threads of cold sweat surfaced on his forehead. An hour later, when Xiao Yan had poured all of his remaining spiritual strength into the two giant hands, a scarlet-red blood arrow suddenly shot out from the entrance that had not changed at all. It swept past the two invisible hands and viciously pierced towards Xiao Yan. It was at this moment that Lang Bingshuang's figure suddenly flashed. In the blink of an eye, she was already in front of Xiao Yan, trying to block the blood arrow. Chapter 1081. The blood arrow that was about to devour a person pierced through the air, carrying a sharp ghost-like howl as it broke through the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had already appeared a few feet in front of Xiao Yan. In the next moment, it would pierce through Xiao Yan's chest. At this moment, a figure wearing a blue dress suddenly flashed in front of Xiao Yan. She actually took the lead to appear in front of Xiao Yan, facing Xiao Yan. At the same time, an extremely cold ice mirror also appeared behind Lang Bingshuang. Chi-chi. Soon after, a low chi-chi sound appeared. The scarlet blood arrow trembled and quietly disappeared in midair. Soon after, when everyone's gazes shot over, they were shocked to find that the one who had blocked the blood arrow was not the ice mirror that was formed behind Lang Bingshuang. Instead, it was a young man wearing a similar black robe. From the looks of it, it was actually the scaled snake. The one who had blocked the blood arrow was actually the scaled snake, who was only a 9-star Do-D. Immediately, the faces of everyone present revealed a deep shock. Even Lang Bingshuang, who had recovered, could not help but reveal a shocked expression on her pretty face. Cough cough. When Xiao Yan lifted his head, he saw a pair of proud snow-white peaks in front of him. His entire body was immediately stunned. Immediately, his old face turned red and he could not help but cough twice. Soon after, Lang Bingshuang, who had turned her head to look at the scaled snake, also discovered that something was wrong when she turned her head. Her exquisite pretty face immediately revealed a red blush. Her delicate body was just about to move when she was pulled to the side by Xiao Yan. After which, she hurriedly collected her emotions and turned her gaze to the scaled snake. Seeing that the latter had so easily resolved the blood arrow, even with Xiao Yan's temperament, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. However, he quickly recovered and recalled that back then, the scaled snake had swallowed the inheritance of the desolate ancient ruins. Speaking of which, there was also a portion of the aura of the original owner of the desolate ancient ruins in his body. Perhaps this was the reason why he was able to control it. On the other hand, Lang Bingshuang's jade-like hand, which was tightly held by Xiao Yan, struggled with all her might. However, in the end, she was unable to escape from Xiao Yan's powerful demonic palm. While she felt helpless in her heart, She actually recalled the words that Xiao Yan had said in the cave. Thinking that the person in front of her actually wanted to conquer her in such a domineering manner, Lang Bingshuang's heart was filled with unwillingness but also some inexplicable joy. Sensing this point, the redness of Lang Bingshuang's face, Lang Bingshuang. Sensing Xiao Yan's gaze, the scaled serpent smiled and turned around to face Xiao Yan. He then swept his gaze over everyone behind him before opening his mouth and saying, "Let me give it a try." The scaled snake's gaze once again returned to Xiao Yan's body. Its gaze seemed to be waiting for the latter's agreement. Upon seeing this, Xiao Yan could not help but be stunned. After a slight hesitation, he nodded his head and left with Lang Bingshuang. Subsequently, under the gazes of the crowd, Lang Bingshuang turned its head and stared at the lake in front of it. A scarlet color gradually surfaced in its pair of black eyes. Following the appearance of that light, the lake, which had just regained its calm, once again surged. Ripples of water retreated to both sides as the scarlet-red entrance to the ruins appeared in front of the crowd's eyes. This time, it was not as strenuous as Xiao Yan had been previously. Instead, it was a calm and unhurried manner. Under the control of Lang Bingshuang, the entrance to the ruins actually gradually opened before the crowd's eyes. Very quickly, the entrance to the ruins had completely appeared before the crowd's eyes. At the same time, waves of scarlet-red blood mist floated out from within. Upon seeing this blood mist once again, Xiao Yan's eyes no longer had the slightest trace of fear. His figure stepped forward and stood beside Lang Bingshuang. The two of them exchanged a look, before turning their heads to speak to the crowd behind them. Immediately, the two of them moved together, flying towards the entrance to the ruins before them. When the two of them arrived before the entrance, Xiao Yan flicked his finger. Light blue flames instantly rose and floated in front of the two of them, dispersing the blood mist that was pouncing towards them. After which, the two of them swiftly disappeared into the entrance of the ruins. Once again arriving at this place, seeing that it still looked the same as before, Xiao Yan could not help but heave a long sigh of relief in his heart. Back then, after they had fought over the inheritance, the entire stone platform had collapsed. Fortunately, the space in the outside world did not seem to be affected by the stone platform. Thus, some of the worries in Xiao Yan's heart could naturally be dispelled. Very quickly, Xiao Yan and Lang Bingshuang appeared before a vast forest. This time, Xiao Yan did not have the slightest bit of hesitation as he directly flew towards the depths of the forest. Relying on his enormous spiritual strength, he quickly found the location of that big fellow from back then. Heh! Grinning, Xiao Yan turned his head to look at Lang Bingshuang beside him. Soon after, the two of them moved together. With lightning speed, they rapidly flew towards the depths of the forest. A quarter of an hour later, the two figures stood in the air. In front of them was a huge empty space. In different directions of the empty space, there were 6 huge black stone pillars that were several feet tall. Mysterious runes were inscribed on them, emitting waves of fluorescent light. The foundations of the stone pillars were connected to each other. From afar, it looked like a hexagon. At the center of these 6 stone pillars was a stone platform. From the broken half of a black stone pillar on the stone platform, there should have been a total of 7 stone pillars here. However, the one in the middle had been destroyed for some reason. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan's gaze was not on these 6 stone pillars. Instead, it was on the stone platform in the middle, at the pitch-black cave that looked like the mouth of a well. Relying on his powerful spiritual strength, he could clearly sense that within the cave, there was an existence with an extremely ferocious aura. Of course, as of now, this aura no longer posed any threat to Xiao Yan. Hee, what's wrong? After such a long time apart, you don't plan on coming out to meet an old friend? Xiao Yan grinned. His laughter seemed to contain some sort of magic, causing the fellow in the cave who had just heard his voice to immediately open a pair of scarlet eyes. Bang! A terrifying force viciously slammed against the stone platform, causing the surrounding forest to violently tremble. A berserk roar rang out from the cave below the stone platform, shaking the heavens and the earth. Late Origin Transformation Stage. Quick! Help me destroy these 7 seals. Chapter 1082. Yes, the late stage of the Origin Transformation Realm. When Xiao Yan had intercourse with Lang Bingshuang earlier, he had coincidentally broken through to the late stage of the Origin Transformation Realm due to the remnant energy of the extreme cold ice soul in his body. Lang Bingshuang was currently at the peak of the late stage of the Origin Transformation Realm. She was only a step away from returnance. However, the moment the enormous ape in the cave sensed Xiaoyan's aura, its mind seemed to have suddenly recalled something. "It's you. The human kid who spied on me back then." His scarlet eyes were filled with shock. It had only been a few years, but the kid in front of him had already grown to such an extent. This was truly shocking. "Hee. Looks like you still remember me." Xiaoyan smiled faintly when he heard that. His smile contained some craftiness. "How is this possible? How did your cultivation increase so quickly?" The ape became even more shocked when he saw Xiaoyan admit it with a smile. It had only been a few short years, so how could he have imagined that the half-step emperor from back then had already become an origin transformation realm expert? Xiaoyan merely parted his mouth and smiled in response to this. The scaled snake by his side also laughed softly. His face was filled with ridicule. "Let's cut to the chase. I've come to find you this time to take you away from here." Xiaoyan wrapped his arms around his chest. He curled his mouth and looked at the entrance of the cave below. When the latter heard this, the shock that had shrouded his heart a moment ago immediately disappeared. Instead, his heart was filled with excitement and wild joy. He had been sealed in this place for an unknown number of years. Now, he finally had the opportunity to leave. "Kid, no, why, is what you said true? You're willing to undo the seal for me and leave here?" Xiaoyan's words caused the enormous ape to address Xiaoyan in a much more solemn manner. One could clearly hear an excitement that could not be suppressed in its voice. Its scarlet beast eyes blocked the exit of the cave. It appeared that it wanted to see Xiaoyan, who was in the air, clearly. "Of course, or I wouldn't have come here again. It's just that." At this moment, the words in Xiaoyan's mouth paused. The heart of the towering sky ape immediately turned cold. "As expected, you're willing to take the risk to save me. If you don't have any other intentions, it really is hard to believe." In the blink of an eye, the ape calmed down once again and sneered. Of course, even with that being the case, Xiaoyan could still sense the eagerness in the ape's voice. He had been sealed here for far too long. If there was a chance for him to leave, the ape would not give up so easily. Now that the chance was right in front of him, how could he remain calm? "Hee, I can save you, but I need you to do something for me." Xiaoyan smiled and spoke faintly. "What? Join my organization?" "Humph. I've never been bound by anyone. You want me to join your organization? Dream on." The ape coldly snorted and ignored Xiaoyan. When the latter heard this, a glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. Soon after, he pretended to helplessly shrug his shoulders and said, "All right, I won't force you. Since you're not willing to join, we'll treat it as if we were never here. Goodbye." "Oh no, never again." After speaking, Xiaoyan turned around and left with the scaled serpent. The latter was somewhat unwilling as it hurriedly turned its head to look at Xiaoyan, only to discover the trace of a smile on the former's lips. The scaled serpent immediately understood and laughed mockingly in its heart. Soon after, it turned around and the two of them flew out of the mountain forest without any hesitation. In the same spot, the giant ape in the cave was filled with hesitation. He did not believe that Xiaoyan would be able to so easily turn around and leave after entering the desolate ancient ruins again. However, when he clearly sensed that Xiaoyan's and the scaled serpent's auras were getting further and further away from him, and were even about to leave this mountain forest, the urgency in his heart finally caused him to open his mouth. "Wait a moment. You've won." His unwilling voice echoed in the mountain forest. In the distant sky, when Xiaoyan and the scaled serpent heard these words, a satisfied smile appeared on their faces. Soon after, they turned around and returned to their original spot in a short few minutes. Their faces were filled with mockery as their gazes once again landed on the cave below. "Humph, you've won. Now you can let me out." The giant ape hatefully snorted, a trace of resentment in its voice. "Hee, how can you say such words? I saved you and you joined me. Both parties are willing and mutually beneficial. It should be a win-win situation for both of us. How can you say that I've won?" Xiaoyan was all smiles as he opened his mouth. The giant ape's mouth twitched as it urged Xiaoyan on. Upon seeing this, Xiaoyan exchanged a look with the scaled serpent beside him. Both of them parted their mouths and smiled. Soon after, Xiaoyan raised his foot and took a step forward. At the same time, the vast and mighty Genesis Qi in his body began to circulate. With a flip of his hand, the pitch-black heavy Xian ruler appeared inch by inch. Next, wave after wave of rich Genesis chi swirled around it. Next, the giant ruler was swung, hovering above his head as it was viciously swung. 7-layer Heaven Breaker Ruler. 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 6 feet in succession. A powerful force viciously smashed against the 6 black stone pillars. The powerful force caused the heavens and earth to tremble. Immediately, under the astonished gaze of the scaled serpent behind him, the 6 stone pillars shattered with a loud bang. With the formation broken, the giant ape was also freed. Roar! An earth-shaking beast roar reverberated throughout the mountain forest. Immediately, the various powerful magical beasts in the mountain forest also released earth-shaking roars. They seemed to be responding, but also seemed to be announcing their status in the mountain forest. At this moment, Xiaoyan, who was standing in the air, suddenly frowned. He let out a surprised cry in his heart. His gaze swept over the enormous ape in front of him that had burst out of the ground. A long while later, he asked with a doubtful face, "Why is your cultivation only an 8-star Do-D?" Based on Xiaoyan's investigation, the true cultivation of this fellow in front of him should be at the origin transformation stage. However, for some unknown reason, his current cultivation was only that of an 8-star Do-D despite having escaped from the seal. This kind of strength was not considered much of a help to Xiaoyan. Cough cough. Upon hearing this, the giant ape could not help but let out 2 dry coughs. My original cultivation was indeed at the origin transformation stage, but back then, the owner of this broken place placed 2 seals on me. One was to seal my cultivation, while the other was to suppress me here. Although my cultivation has gradually recovered after so many years, there is still a very long way to go before I reach the origin transformation stage. Chapter 1083. Xiaoyan's originally frown immediately deepened when he heard the words of the towering sky ape. In other words, he had painstakingly made this trip in exchange for an 8-star Do-D? Xiaoyan's heart immediately sank when he thought of this. It was very difficult for an elite Do-D to be of any critical use in a battle of this level. If this was merely the case, it was likely that this trip of his would have been in vain. When the towering sky ape noticed that Xiaoyan's face had suddenly become gloomy, its heart involuntarily tightened. It was afraid that this fellow would leave it here because he was unable to achieve his goal. In that case, even if it could leave the cave below, it would still be sealed in this small world that would never see the light of day. Cough cough. Actually, my cultivation can be recovered. The towering sky ape coughed dryly twice and hurriedly said. Xiaoyan's face, which had just sunk, immediately revealed a glimmer of hope when he heard this. The eyes that he used to look at the enormous ape in front of him also flickered. How can it be recovered? Through medicinal pills. As it spoke, the towering sky ape extended a finger and pointed it at Xiaoyan from a distance. A ray of light immediately cut through the empty space and landed in Xiaoyan's hand in the blink of an eye. It was a scroll. When Xiaoyan opened the scroll, the first row of words that entered his eyes immediately caused the glimmer of hope that had just risen in his heart to once again dim. Purple Jade Pill. Rank 5 Medicinal Pill. Forget about the use of this medicinal pill. Just the words Rank 5 Medicinal Pill were enough to extinguish this glimmer of hope. Even if Xiaoyan was able to refine a Rank 5 medicinal pill, it would still require a very long time. However, the thing that Xiaoyan lacked the most was time. 10 days later, the big battle between the Xiao Gate and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley would officially begin. There was not much time left for Xiaoyan to begin with. It was even more impossible for him to refine a Rank 5 medicinal pill within 10 days. Hee, I can sense that there is the aura of a heavenly flame in your body. If I have guessed correctly, you should be an alchemist. If you are able to refine this purple jade pill, I will completely agree to join your faction. The towering sky ape laughed. It seemed that it was gratified by its own wisdom. Now that it had escaped the seal and had the opportunity to recover its cultivation, it was really a blessing from the heavens. Unfortunately, Xiaoyan only frowned and shook his head in the face of the towering sky ape's words. He returned the scroll in his hand as he helplessly said, I am sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid it's too late. We only have 10 days left. To refine a level 5 pill in 10 days, I think you should know that it's simply impossible. So I'm sorry. As his voice faded, Xiaoyan turned around. The scaled snake beside him also sighed in disappointment. The The two of them simultaneously turned around and prepared to leave. Immediately after, just as the two of them were about to turn around and leave, the towering sky ape behind them once again spoke out and called out to Xiaoyan. "Wait a moment." Xiaoyan was startled. This time, he was not trying to scare this fellow. However, why did it call out to him? Perhaps it is not completely impossible. As his voice faded, the towering sky ape's enormous body began to transform. In the blink of an eye, it had transformed into a bare-chested brawny man. If one looked closely, one could clearly see that there was an extremely obvious scar on the brawny man's chin. Hearing the other party's words, Xiaoyan's expression instantly froze. From the other party's tone, could it be that there was another possibility? Subsequently, under the bewildered gazes of Xiaoyan and the scaled snake, the brawny man extended his hand and pointed to the ground below. Only then did the two of them realize that although the towering sky ape had broken out of the seal, the 7 stone platforms that served as the foundation of the 7 completely broken stone pillars were not affected in the slightest. They were still standing in their original positions. As Xiaoyan and the scaled snake looked over, the brawny man opened his mouth again and said, "These 7 formations were left behind by the owner of these ruins. Their purpose was to trap me here. However, with the passage of time and some of my influence, these 7 formations have long changed in the long river of time. The 7 stone pillars are only used to stabilize the formation. Only the 7 stone platforms below are the true weapons used to trap me." These words were not enough to attract Xiaoyan's attention, but the brawny man's following words explained the uniqueness of this formation to Xiaoyan. With the evolution of the stone platforms, the 7 stone platforms contained an extremely large amount of space power, causing a special node to be born somewhere in the space below the 7 stone platforms. At that node, the concept of time was quite ingenious. According to the brawny man, time would become very slow at that node. 1 day inside would be equivalent to 10 days in the outside world. However, although the benefits were great, it was also very difficult to control that node. It was also because of this that the towering sky ape did not use that node to recover its cultivation for such a long time. If Xiaoyan could attempt to control that node and succeed, it would not be impossible for him to refine a violet jade pill within 10 days. Hearing the brawny man's words, Xiaoyan could not help but feel a little moved. If what the brawny man said was true, then as long as he could successfully control that node and refine a violet jade pill, his Xiao clan would have another origin transformation expert. Although he did not know if he could succeed, now that the formation had been broken, there were no longer any obstructions in the space below the stone platforms. Instead of worrying about other things, he might as well go in and give it a try. After instructing the scaled serpent, Xiaoyan leaped and landed in the cave below. The scaled serpent's gaze landed on the strong man in front of it. Although his words were very moving, the scaled serpent still needed to keep a close eye on the latter before it could confirm that everything was correct. If there was any problem with Xiaoyan, it would immediately kill this guy on the spot. Although there was only a difference of 1 star between an 8-star Do-D and a 9-star Do-D, the scaled snake was completely confident that he could successfully kill this fellow if he attacked. After Xiaoyan entered the cave, Xiaoyan relied on his enormous spiritual strength to search the pitch-black space. Indeed, there was an extremely special energy node somewhere in this space. This was also what the brawny man had said. Carrying curiosity and caution in his heart, Xiaoyan slowly approached the energy node. When his entire body arrived in front of the node, a certain kind of energy within Xiaoyan's body suddenly and involuntarily agglomerated. This was his great way of the void. Chapter 1084. Xiaoyan felt a surprise in his heart when he sensed the strangeness of the great way of the void. Soon after, he used his spiritual strength to investigate the energy node in front of him. Only then did his heart come to a sudden understanding. At the same time, a wild joy swiftly rose within his heart. The thing that Xiaoyan did not expect was that this so-called energy node did not contain any spatial strength. Instead, it was the strength of the Great Way. Great Tao power that belonged to the Great Tao of the Void. When the Great Tao power in Xiaoyan's body completely condensed in front of him, Xiaoyan was pleasantly surprised to find that the Great Tao power contained in the energy node wasn't inferior to the Great Tao power in his body. In fact, the Great Tao power was even richer. This also meant that if Xiaoyan was able to absorb all of this Great Tao strength, the number of tents that he could form would be at least double of what he currently had. It should be said that the cultivation of Great Tao power was undoubtedly several times more difficult than Battle Qi and Genesis Qi. Even someone as talented as Shui Miao could only condense 1 water curtain in a year. But now, They were equivalent to 10 tenths in front of Xiao Yan. How could Xiao Yan miss such a gift from heaven and earth? With a thought, Xiao Yan controlled his own great way of the void and slowly approached the energy node in front of him. Only when the two came into contact with each other and confirmed that the two forces did not cause any conflict did Xiao Yan heave a sigh of relief in his heart. After which, he continued to connect and merge the remaining Great Way strength with it with a nervous heart. In the end, all the great Tao power in Xiao Yan's body fused with the energy node in front of him, and the energy node's volume also expanded a lot. At the same time, Xiao Yan suddenly had an illusion in his heart the moment the two great Tao strengths successfully merged. It was as though this originally ownerless energy node had suddenly found an owner. A kind of mysterious connection actually rose between Xiao Yan and this energy node. This kind of connection allowed him to clearly understand all the changes within this energy node as well as the enormous amount of energy it contained. With this thought in mind, Xiao Yan's heart trembled. Although he didn't dare to be completely confident, he still tried to use the connection between him and the energy node to control it. When Xiao Yan saw the large cluster of dark black energy in front of him begin to wiggle, an excited expression involuntarily surged into his dark black eyes. As expected, the control of this energy junction had already landed in Xiao Yan's hands. By relying on the great Tao strength that belonged to him, Xiao Yan successfully linked the two energies, causing the control of this energy junction to land in Xiao Yan's hands without any surprise. Now, the energy node was completely under Xiao Yan's control. Other than this, after Xiao Yan's subsequent investigation, he had also clearly sensed that it was just as the strong man had said. The concept of time within this ability node was many times slower than the outside world. In other words, if he were to borrow the special effect of this energy node, it would not be a problem for him to refine the purple jade pill within 10 days. This time might even be much shorter than he had expected. At the same time, outside, the scaled serpent and the sky-reaching great ape were also waiting bitterly for Xiao Yan's news. However, the two had different goals. Just as the scaled snake was becoming impatient from waiting, and its icy cold gaze landed on the body of the towering sky ape, Xiao Yan's voice suddenly sounded from the interior of the cave below. Scaled serpent, I've successfully controlled the energy node. I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. Hearing this, the scaled serpent's nervous mood calmed down and it replied. When it looked again at the sky-reaching great ape, it found that the latter's face was filled with joy. This made the scaled serpent immediately vigilant. Then, it directly landed on the ground below and guarded the cave entrance. Its gaze was always on the naked man in mid-air. The latter was unconcerned about this. At this moment, his focus was completely on Xiao Yan. Or perhaps it could be said that the latter was preparing to refine the purple jade pill. As long as Xiao Yan was able to refine the purple jade pill, his cultivation would be able to recover. At that time, why would he need to be afraid of this triangular-eyed fellow in front of him? In the cave, Xiao Yan's mind moved. Above the energy node, a circle of invisible energy immediately spread out, enveloping Xiao Yan and the small space around him. Immediately, Xiao Yan could clearly feel that within the space that was enveloped by the energy, whether it was the density of the space itself or the speed of the flow of the air, everything changed in an instant. Even Xiao Yan's breathing stopped for a moment. When he breathed again, he was so shocked that he felt as if he had not breathed for a long time. His entire face turned purplish-red in an instant. Soon after 10 minutes, his eyes opened wide in anger. But even so, the deep shock in his eyes did not disappear. After a long while, Xiao Yan sat cross-legged in the dark space with lingering fear. With a flick of his finger, the green gold Luo Tian cauldron appeared. With the pill formula and a portion of the medicinal ingredients that the heaven-reaching giant ape had given him, in addition to some of Xiao Yan's own reserves, he was barely able to gather 5 sets of medicinal ingredients that could be used to refine medicinal pills. But relatively speaking, this amount was already considered very impressive. After which, Xiao Yan swiftly calmed his heart. Without any hesitation, he opened his mouth and a fierce, heavenly flame immediately spat out, gathering into the medicinal cauldron in front of him. Soon after, with a flick of his finger, the storage ring on his finger continuously flickered. Numerous precious medicinal ingredients, which could be considered priceless treasures in the outside world, flew out like a wisp of smoke. Under the control of Xiao Yan's enormous spiritual strength, they were thrown into the medicinal cauldron in front of him and refined at a surprisingly fast speed. Very quickly, 2 days had passed in the outside world. The scaled snake and the heaven-reaching giant ape were still facing each other from a great distance. Outside of the desolate ancient remains, Lang Bingshuang, the little fairy doctor and the rest were quietly waiting with different emotions. Among the silent crowd, one could tell just how anxious and worried Lang Bingshuang was in her heart when she saw the frown between her eyebrows. Just as everyone was silent, the little fairy doctor, who was originally enjoying the shade under a large tree not far from Lang Bingshuang, suddenly turned her gaze to Lang Bingshuang. After hesitating for a moment, she finally stood up and walked over to Lang Bingshuang. When she came close, Lang Bingshuang's gaze had already met the latter's. The two of them stood face to face. It seemed that both of them had something to say, but neither of them opened their mouths. After being silent for a long while, the little fairy doctor gently opened her mouth. Her pair of beautiful eyes flickered slightly. Only then did she speak with some hesitation. "Can you take a walk with me in the forest? I have some things that I want to talk to you about." Hearing this, Lang Bingshuang's jade-like hand, which was hooking onto a corner of her long skirt, could not help but tremble slightly. In the end, she released the corner of her skirt and nodded her head without saying anything. Immediately, she moved her feet and walked towards the forest in front of the many pairs of surprised gazes behind her. Chapter 1085. Rumble. Within the desolate ancient ruins, the forest was empty. Thunderclouds suddenly churned in the originally calm world. The dark thunderclouds quickly covered the entire sky. In just a short span of a dozen breaths, it caused the light in the world to darken. The rumbling thunder caused the countless magical beasts in the forest below to be alarmed. A portion of the stronger magical beasts raised their heads as excitement and greed appeared in their large eyes. There were even quite a few of them that had already begun to move towards the center of the thunderclouds. Outside the cave, the scaled serpent and the towering giant ape stared in shock at the scene that had suddenly appeared in front of them. However, in the blink of an eye, the two of them regained their senses. Simultaneously, their gazes turned and landed on the cave below. Both of their eyes were filled with shock. "This is pill lightning. Doesn't that mean that the violet jade pill has been successfully refined? It's only been 2 days, yet the violet jade pill has already been refined. This formation sure is wondrous." At that moment, joy filled the faces of the scaled snake and the ape, especially the ape. The refinement of the violet jade pill meant that the seal within his body would be removed. At that time, his cultivation would completely return to the origin transformation realm. He believed that at that time, no one in the western region would be his opponent with his cultivation at the origin transformation realm. The heart of the towering sky ape involuntarily rejoiced when he thought of this. At this moment, the thunderclouds in the sky suddenly changed. At the same time, quite a number of high-rank magical beasts swiftly rushed over from the distant mountain forest. These beasts had clearly sensed the extraordinariness of the medicinal pill that Xiao Yan had refined and wanted to take the opportunity to compete for it. When they saw this scene, the scaled snake and the towering giant ape involuntarily furrowed their brows. Just as the two of them were about to make a move, a shocking thunderbolt suddenly shot down from the violently churning thunderclouds in the sky. Its target was the cave directly below. As the lightning descended, a terrifying aura immediately pervaded the area. Even from a distance, the powerful energy caused people to feel nervous and uncontrollable. The expressions of the scaled snake and the giant ape instantly changed. The power of the lightning summoned by a Tier 5 medicinal pill was not something they could easily contend against. In addition, the magical beasts in the mountain forest were getting closer and closer to them. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for them. However, in the next moment, just as the lightning above their heads descended and the magical beasts in the mountain forest attacked, a black shadow indeed flashed out from the cave below like a ghost. With an extremely frightening speed, it rushed into the sky in the blink of an eye. Soon after, a fist violently collided with the descending lightning. Boom! An earth-shattering sound instantly spread out, and a terrifying energy storm swept out. The powerful energy storm was like a hurricane that swept across the sky above the sea of trees, toppling the forest. The attacking magical beasts were all blown away by this powerful energy storm. In their original spot, when the scaled snake and the ape raised their heads to look, they saw that the person who had blocked the lightning was actually Xiao Yan. With a punch, the descending lightning was forcibly stopped by Xiao Yan. However, the remaining energy from the lightning still clashed with Xiao Yan. It even climbed onto Xiao Yan's arm and entered his body. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly. With a jerk of his arm, a terrifying power suddenly struck out and shattered the remaining lightning.
At the same time, with a thought, the mysterious fire in his body also quickly flowed out at this moment, wrapping around the power of the lightning that had entered his body and began to frantically refine it.
The hearts of the scaled serpent and the towering sky giant ape below were greatly shocked when they saw this scene, especially the latter. The terror of the thunderbolt was something that he clearly understood in his heart. Even at his peak, he would not dare to easily face it.
However, the current Xiaoyan did not hesitate even a little as he charged forward.
Just this point alone was enough to tell just how great Xiaoyan's strength was.
Rumble!
However, at this moment, just as Xiaoyan shattered the lightning in the sky above, an even more terrifying lightning suddenly fell again, striking directly at Xiaoyan's head. That kind of momentum was enough to make one's heart tremble. However, the latter's expression did not change.
A stern look was revealed in his eyes as his body jerked. Frightening power immediately gathered in his arms as his right hand clenched into a fist and violently swung it.
Fist winds howled as an ear-piercing sonic boom echoed across the land. Next, the fist viciously collided with the second lightning bolt. Boom! A frightening energy storm unfurled once again. This time, Xiaoyan's figure was blasted back by the second lightning bolt. His figure fell 100 feet from the sky before stabilizing himself with a frown. Xiaoyan lifted his head to look at the sky. At the same time, he controlled the heavenly flame within his body and wildly refined the lightning strength. He swallowed the waves of strength and his own cultivation also began to vaguely rise as a result. Upon sensing this, Xiaoyan was overjoyed instead of alarmed.
He circulated his Genesis Qi to expel the numbness from his arm, before leaping into the air once again to meet the lightning head-on.
Rumble, rumble, rumble. The successive bombardment of several dozen lightning bolts caused Xiaoyan's face to turn deathly pale.
However, the expression in his eyes grew brighter and brighter, as if he was bursting with energy.
The scaled serpent and giant ape below were dumbstruck at the sight of Xiaoyan blocking so many lightning bolts by himself. The muscles on their faces twitched uncontrollably, and they looked at the former as if they were looking at a monster.
Ha 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 ha.
Not bad, as expected of the power of the land.
Again.
The corner of Xiaoyan's mouth, which was dyed with blood, suddenly parted. A wild and crazy expression was revealed on his face. His eyes arrogantly stared at the thunderclouds in the sky. His body shook and the Genesis Qi within his body once again surged out. Both of his hands were swiftly lifted. His 10 fingers linked together and numerous seals were formed in a ghost-like manner. At the same time, a huge energy finger was swiftly formed in the sky above his head.
Desolation finger, go! With a loud roar, the giant energy finger above Xiaoyan's head viciously charged towards the thunderclouds in the sky with a terrifying aura.
Rumble! At the same time, the thunderclouds in the sky began to churn again. Thunder boomed, and another bolt of lightning fell. The destructive aura contained within it was several times stronger than before. Rumble! The world shook when the two made contact. The invisible empty space collapsed in an instant. The battleground between Xiaoyan and the thundercloud was completely destroyed. Xiaoyan's body stepped into the endless empty space and faced the pill lightning from a great distance. Only a moment later did the thunderbolt in the sky scatter. On the other hand, Xiaoyan's body had disappeared from the empty space at an unknown time. The scaled serpents and the giant ape's expressions changed when they realized this. But a split second later, the thunderclouds in the sky suddenly began to churn violently. Lightning shot out in all directions, but it was no longer as berserk and powerful as before. At the same time, a strange suction force surged out from the thunderclouds, forcibly tearing apart the lightning that surged out. The scaled serpents and the giant ape's hearts were filled with shock when they saw this strange scene. It was only a long time later when the lightning bolt scattered, revealing the figure within. Only then did the two of them understand that the source of the suction force was actually Xiaoyan, who had entered the thunderclouds. At this very moment, there were a total of 20 black tents standing in the void around Xiaoyan, surrounding him. The lightning bolts were completely devoured by the 20 tents. After being refined by Xiaoyan, waves of pure and enormous energy were poured into Xiaoyan's body. As for the 20 tents, half of them originated from the energy node in the cave below. Chapter 1086. After absorbing the strength of the Great Way within the energy nodes, Xiaoyan's tentacles, which were agglomerated from the Great Way of the Void, did indeed have 10 additional tentacles, just as he had expected. Moreover, Xiaoyan had also discovered that other than being able to help him traverse through empty space, his Void Great Way had another effect, devouring. The Way of the Void could help Xiaoyan devour the energy of the world at an even faster rate. After a simple refinement, the energy would flow into Xiaoyan's body before being refined by Xiaoyan's heavenly flame. Although it was roughly the same as absorbing and refining the energy on his own, the benefit of borrowing the Way of the Void to devour the energy of the world was that Xiaoyan could use it to devour even more powerful energy and avoid a portion of it affecting him. In other words, if Xiaoyan were to use his great Dao strength to devour those thunderbolts, the lightning strength that was emitted from them would not cause any harm to Xiaoyan's physical body. Instead, it would be directly sent into the heavenly flame to be refined and absorbed. This way, Xiaoyan's absorption of the lightning strength would be accelerated from another point of view. After a long while, Xiaoyan stood up in the air. The energy of the lightning in his body had been completely refined by Xiaoyan. It had become a large amount of energy that had fused with the vortex in Xiaoyan's body, becoming a part of him. After refining this energy, Xiaoyan was delighted to discover that his own cultivation had risen a little. Not only had he stabilized his advanced origin transformation stage cultivation, but his strength had also risen. This was an unexpected surprise. The Way of the Void had been strengthened, and his cultivation had increased. Adding on the fact that he had subdued an origin transformation realm expert like the heaven-reaching ape, it had to be said that Xiaoyan had benefited greatly from this trip to the desolate ancient ruins. Descending, Xiaoyan retrieved the cauldron and the violet jade pill from the cave. Afterward, he returned to the side of the scaled serpent and its companion. Seeing Xiaoyan descend, the heaven-reaching ape immediately rushed forward excitedly. It looked at Xiaoyan with a face full of smiles and hurriedly asked, "May I ask if the violet jade pill that Mr. refined?" "Here it is." Without any hesitation, Xiaoyan casually tossed a purple pill the size of a longan fruit to the former. Seeing this, the Tongtian giant ape hurriedly and carefully caught it. The scaled serpent at the side looked hesitantly at Xiaoyan, a trace of worry in its eyes. Only when it saw the confident smile on Xiaoyan's face did it secretly relax. After all, Xiaoyan had roamed the continent for many years. His experience was extraordinary. If the scaled serpent could think of this, how could he not? This towering sky ape in front of Xiaoyan might have already obtained the purple jade pill, but even if he had used the medicinal pill to recover his cultivation, it would not be difficult for Xiaoyan to kill him if he had any thoughts. As expected, after obtaining the violet jade pill, the heaven-reaching great ape did not hesitate at all. After confirming that there was no problem with the pill, it hurriedly consumed the pill and sat down cross-legged. Not far from Xiaoyan and the scaled serpent, it began to use the pill to break the seal within its body. Roughly 4 hours later, the heaven-reaching great ape suddenly opened its tightly shut eyes. At the same time, an extremely powerful aura erupted from its body. Its aura was so powerful that it was comparable to a mid-origin transformation expert. What's going on? Why have I only recovered to mid-origin transformation? Brat, what did you do to me? Sensing that there was something wrong with its cultivation, the heaven-reaching great ape's face immediately changed. It looked at Xiaoyan with a gloomy expression and a vicious look in the depths of its eyes. As expected, you've turned your back on me. Xiaoyan quietly laughed coldly in his heart. Soon after, he took a step forward, shook his head and smiled. He raised his eyes to look at the former and said, he looked at the heaven-reaching great ape and said, "I say, don't tell me you don't even understand the pill formula in your hands? The violet jade pill is indeed able to remove the seal for you, but its effects are only effective for 10 years after your cultivation is sealed. You've already been sealed here for who knows how many years. It's already pretty good that you've recovered to this extent. If you want to return to your peak, I'm afraid you'll have to find another method." "What did you say?" Hearing that, the heaven-reaching great ape was stunned. He never thought that the method he had always believed to be able to remove the seal would actually be unable to help him recover all his strength. If that was the case, he would be at a great disadvantage when facing Xiaoyan. I'm done playing. See you never." The muscles on the heaven-reaching great ape's face twitched slightly. He suddenly turned around and was about to charge out of the ruins. "Heaven-reaching great ape, you promised me that you would join my faction. Why are you going back on your word now?" Xiaoyan's eyes narrowed slightly, a mocking smile on his face. Upon hearing this, the heaven-reaching great ape grinned, revealing an icy sneer as he mocked. Yes, I did promise you, but that was only before you helped me recover all my strength. Since you've failed to do so, why should I keep my promise? After finishing, the heaven-reaching great ape turned to leave. However, the moment he turned around, Xiaoyan raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In the next instant, wisps of light blue flames abruptly rose from the countless pores on the heaven-reaching great ape's body. In the blink of an eye, the flames had wrapped around his entire body. The sudden turn of events caused the heaven-reaching great ape's movements to abruptly freeze, his heart filled with shock. Just as he was about to circulate the Genesis Qi in his body, Xiaoyan behind him sneered. I advise you not to circulate the Genesis Qi in your body, or the heavenly fire on your body will only grow stronger and stronger. When that happens, even I won't be able to save you if you bring about your own destruction. The heaven-reaching great ape's heart was instantly alarmed. His body froze in the air as he angrily said without turning his head. Brat, you're despicable. Hee, I'm just taking precautions. If you had obediently followed me, I wouldn't have had to resort to such means. How about it? Do you still want to leave now? Don't go too far. I, the heaven-reaching great ape, will not be bound by anyone. So you're not willing? Xiaoyan chuckled, his eyes narrowing slightly. At the same time, the raging flames burning on the former's body abruptly grew even more ferocious. Terrifying heat was released slightly, causing the heaven-reaching great ape to release a miserable howl. Enough. I promise you. In the end, the heaven-reaching great ape agreed with a roar, while Xiaoyan curled his lips into a smile. With a thought, the flames burning on the former's body scattered. If you're a little more straightforward, it will save me some effort. Xiaoyan indifferently glanced at the former. His body moved, and he led the two people behind him as they walked out of the desolate ancient remains with an extremely fast speed. Chapter 1087. After Xiaoyan's group of 3 left the desolate ancient ruins, everyone was still waiting outside. When Lang Bingshuang and Kai saw the bare-chested man behind Xiaoyan, they could not help but be shocked by his aura. Another mid-origin transformation realm expert. To the current them, such an expert was an absolute force to be reckoned with. Of course, while everyone was paying attention to the heaven-reaching ape, the latter's gaze also landed on Kai and Lang Bingshuang. When he saw Kai, he could not help but feel shocked at how young she was. It was very difficult to imagine that such a young girl who still had some childishness would actually be an origin transformation expert. Moreover, her cultivation was not inferior to his current self. This guy actually has such a monstrous person by his side. His heart was slightly shocked. Immediately after, when his gaze landed on Lang Bingshuang, his entire face abruptly changed. His entire body involuntarily began to tremble. She. The heaven-reaching ape's face paled as his lips and teeth trembled. The fear in his heart was indescribable. Facing Lang Bingshuang, not only did he feel a kind of suppression in terms of cultivation, he could also feel the special aura within her body. It was a pressure that came from the royal bloodline of the devil-beast world. The pressure that came from the bloodline caused him to feel a deep sense of fear. He even had the urge to kneel before her. The law of the devil-beast world was simple and tyrannical. When facing an existence with a mid-high-ranked devil-beast bloodline, even if the difference in cultivation between them was not large, the former would still lose all ability to fight. At this moment, the heaven-reaching ape was facing Lang Bingshuang. It was also at this moment that Lang Bingshuang suddenly faced Xiaoyan and let out a cold snort. The heaven-reaching ape, who was filled with fear, instantly returned to his senses. He hurriedly controlled his emotions and retreated to the side with his head lowered. Xiaoyan was a little confused as he looked at Lang Bingshuang. Immediately, he saw the indifferent expression on the little fairy doctor's pretty face and immediately had a bad premonition in his heart. As for the remaining people, they were also silent. The atmosphere between them was inexplicably stiff. This strange atmosphere continued until the group returned to the depths of the Shilin mountain range. When everyone returned to this place, they discovered that quite a number of experts from Shao Gate were surrounding a white-clothed young man on a mountain peak with grave expressions. The Do Qi within their bodies were agglomerated on the surface of their bodies. Their faces were filled with hostility, appearing extremely cautious. The young man sat cross-legged quietly with his eyes shut. He did not say a word, as if he was waiting for something. When Xiaoyan and the rest arrived, the latter's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. His gaze instantly fell on Xiaoyan, who was standing in front of the crowd. At the same time, Xiaoyan's gaze had already noticed the latter's existence.
However, the corner of his mouth was involuntarily lifted into a smile.
This person's arrival could be said to be providing timely help. The aura of this person was extremely familiar to Xiao Yan. It was the young master of the Murong clan whom he had met in the ancient tomb of Heaven's End. He was also Murong Xianxian's elder brother, Murong Xian. Back then, Murong Xian had quite a lot of enmity towards Xiao Yan. However, after the incident with Yi Luotian, the relationship between both parties had become much warmer. When they met again this time around, Xiao Yan had a warm smile on his face. On the other hand, Murong Xian's eyes were filled with shock when he first saw Xiao Yan. Murong Xian clearly remembered that Xiao Yan had returned to the depths of the ancient tomb of Heaven's End by himself. Afterwards, the entire dwelling began to collapse. Logically speaking, Xiao Yan should have died in the tomb. However, looking at him now, Xiao Yan was actually standing there unscathed. This truly shocked Murong Xian, as well as somewhat rejoiced. Aside from this, what shocked Murong Xian the most was Xiao Yan's current cultivation. He could clearly sense that Xiao Yan's current aura was actually much more powerful than his own. After so many years, coupled with the inheritance he had obtained from the ancient tomb of Heaven's End, Murong Xian's cultivation had reached the early origin transformation realm. He was only a step away from the mid-origin transformation realm. Unfortunately, although this kind of cultivation could be considered a demon among most of the younger generation, there was too much of a gap when compared to the current Xiao Yan.
Murong Xian, why have you come?
Without a doubt, Lang Bingshuang was much more familiar with this person than Xiao Yan. The moment she saw him, she could not help but ask in doubt. He, Sister Bingshuang, it's like this. I've come this time because I have some matters to discuss with you. It's just that your welcoming party is a little too grand. Murong Xian swept his gaze over the surrounding people from the Xiao clan and could not help but laugh mockingly. Only when Xiao Yan and the others arrived did the crowd leave. Brother Murong, it's been a few years since we last met. How have you been? Xiao Yan opened his mouth with a face full of smiles when he had just arrived in front of him. At the same time, a pair of eyes that contained a glint also sized up the latter's body. After which, he repeatedly nodded. His eyes revealed a satisfied expression. If he could obtain the assistance of the person before him, his chances of victory in the battle in the Qin Wasteland Maze would undoubtedly increase by a lot. Noticing Xiao Yan's undisguised gaze, Murong Xian's heart immediately jumped. Behind him, Lang Bingshuang frowned as she glanced at Xiao Yan and asked in doubt, "What? Do you know each other?" "That's right. Back then in the Tianjue ancient tomb, I met Mr. Xiao Yan a few times." Murong Xian's gaze continued to stare at Xiao Yan as his eyes faintly flickered. It's not just a few times. Back then, Yi Luotian joined forces with the young valley master of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley and almost killed Brother Murong. You can't have forgotten about this, right? Hearing this, Xiao Yan grinned. However, there was a deliberate tone in his words. When Murong Xian heard this, he cupped his hands and thanked Xiao Yan with a dry smile. However, it was Lang Bingshuang who knitted her eyebrows and said in a somewhat low voice, "What? You've come into contact with the people from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley?" When these words were spoken, Murong Xian immediately felt helpless. He had clearly come with a mission. Why was the matter from back then being brought up instead? Moreover, from the looks of it, Lang Bingshuang seemed to be very concerned about it. Helpless, Murong Xian roughly recounted how Yi Luotian and his group had taken the initiative to find trouble with them back then. Although Lang Bingshuang only heard the gist of the story, she was able to understand how dangerous it was. However, she was somewhat surprised by Xiao Yan's actions. Yi Luotian, Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. In 10 days, this king will definitely make you pay the price in blood. Lang Bingshuang's ice-cold eyes stared intently at the empty space in front of her as her jade-like hands slowly clenched. The instant her jade-like hands clenched into fists, the empty space in front of her actually exploded with a bang. This scene caused the hearts of the few people behind her to secretly shiver. Even Xiao Yan could not help but involuntarily curl his lips. However, the words that Lang Bingshuang spat out soon after caused Xiao Yan's heart to immediately rejoice. Murong Xian, you should stay in the Shilin mountain range for the time being. In 10 days, when we have a decisive battle with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, we will take back all the humiliation from back then. Chapter 1088. Murong Xian was speechless when he heard Lang Bingshuang's words. He did not even know what had happened here. He had only come this time to pass on a message to Lang Bingshuang. Why had he been left here? Moreover, it seemed that he was going to participate in a great battle. This had truly caught Murong Xian off guard. However, Tian Ying and the others quickly explained Lang Bingshuang's words to him. They even explained clearly about the great battle between the Shao Gate and the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley 10 days later. Of course, it had only been 8 days since the start of the great battle. Even though Murong Xian wanted to refuse, he could not help but swallow the words that had already reached his mouth when he saw Lang Bingshuang's icy face. On the other side, Xiao Yan had also relaxed. Counting it this way, with the addition of Murong Xian and the towering sky giant ape, his Shao Gate currently had 6 origin transformation stage experts. In this way, he would have some confidence even if the people from the Ghost Hall were to attack. 6 origin transformation experts. A lineup like this was already enough to crush the entire western region. If it were not for his fear of the Ghost Hall, Xiao Yan would have already brought people to find them. There was no need for them to wait for 10 days. After that, Murong Xian also clearly explained the purpose of his visit. It seemed that the clan behind him wanted Lang Bingshuang to take some time to return. Although these words sounded somewhat cordial, Xiao Yan was able to hear some sincerity in them. With regards to this, Lang Bingshuang also had the intention to pursue the matter. Murong Xian, on the other hand, vaguely refused to explain. This caused Xiao Yan and Lang Bingshuang to harbor even more doubts in their hearts. However, it must be said that the current western region was really in troubled times. Although the Shilin mountain range appeared rather quiet, the news of the decisive battle between the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley and the Shilin mountain range swiftly spread throughout the Shilin region and the western wasteland as if it had grown wings. On the 4th day of the 10-day period, the Shilin mountain range actually received an uninvited guest. Deep within the Shilin mountain range, the people from the Shao Gate, who were preparing for the great battle 6 days later, suddenly sensed an aura that originated from outside the Shilin mountain range. The strength of the aura caused the expressions of all the Do-Di present to change. Everyone felt a wave of shock in their hearts. Since when had origin transformation experts become so worthless in the western region? This person was actually an origin transformation realm expert. Swoosh swoosh. Following a couple of sonic booms, Xiao Yan's group was already standing high in the sky. The one at the front was naturally Xiao Yan. Behind him were Lang Bingshuang, the little fairy doctor, and the rest. Only the heaven-reaching ape and Murong Xian were not present among them. Before knowing the identity of the person who had come, Xiao Yan hoped that he could temporarily hide a portion of his strength to avoid bringing unnecessary trouble to his group during the great battle. Only by knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy could one emerge victorious in 100 battles. Currently, Xiao Yan did not even know the true strength of the other party. How could he easily expose the faction in his hands? Although this person was a great distance away, Xiao Yan was still able to recognize him by relying on the familiarity in his memories. This person was actually Bai Zhan. Bai Zhan was the young master of the Bai family, one of the 4 great clans under the Heavenly Sword sect. His father, Bai Ying, was a crafty person. Back when he was still a subordinate of the Heavenly Sword sect, he had secretly allied with Xiao Yan. However, the 4 great sects had all been unified by the Withered Leaf sect, so logically speaking, the Bai family should have become Yiluotian's subordinates. Why had he come? Haha, Brother Xiao, I never thought that you would have already reached the origin transformation realm after not seeing you for so many years. This really does surprise me. Before the person arrived, a bold laughter was transmitted over. Hearing this voice, Xiao Yan was even more certain in his heart. Who else could this person be other than Bai Zhan? Brother Bai Zhan, you're not bad either. Haven't you also reached the origin transformation realm? Xiao Yan clasped his hands at the empty space in front of him and smiled. Soon after, the originally empty space really began to distort. Soon after, the figure of a young man in white robes appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the others. The moment he appeared, the young man in white robes could not help but laugh. How can a mere initial origin transformation expert compare to Brother Xiao? It said that a few days ago, you forced back 2 origin transformation experts from the Lost Valley of the Qin Wastelands by yourself. You're the one who can be called a hero of our generation. The expression in Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily changed after Bai Zhan's words. He faintly smiled and changed the topic. However, he was suspicious inside. Logically speaking, News of Qin Shua and Yi Luotian being chased away by him and the others being killed by him should not have spread to the outside world. So how did Bai Zhan find out? Unless, in this vast mountain forest, there were still spies of his. Then their actions in the past few days were... Haha, don't worry, Brother Xiao. My Bai clan has nothing to do with the lost valley of the Qin wastelands or even Yi Luotian. As if he had seen through Xiao Yan's worries, Bai Zhan's words hit the nail on the head, causing Xiao Yan's heart to shiver slightly. The members of the Bai clan were truly too shrewd. Behind Xiao Yan, Lang Bingshuang, Tian Ying and the others all frowned when they heard these words. They were somewhat suspicious in their hearts. Was there still a faction in the current western region that had not been touched by the lost valley of the Qin wastelands? If these words were uttered from someone else's mouth, Xiao Yan might still have some doubts. However, when these words came from Bai Zhan's mouth, Xiao Yan felt that he naturally believed them. It was as though he believed something that was only natural. As the saying goes, one does not visit a temple without a cause. Brother Bai Zhan must have come to discuss our decisive battle with the lost valley of the Qin wastelands in a few days, right? Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes as he said with a slight smile. Bai Zhan also parted his mouth and smiled when he heard this. He exchanged glances with Xiao Yan and the smiles on their faces gradually widened. Yes, but not entirely. Xiao Yan was immediately startled when these words were spoken. Lang Bingshuang, who was behind him, also immediately turned her ice-cold gaze towards Bai Zhan. Her eyes contained a trace of enmity. If he was not here to help them, he could be treated as an enemy. Brother Xiao, I have not come here to discuss cooperation with you. Before he could finish his sentence, Lang Bingshuang, who was behind Xiao Yan, shook her delicate body. A powerful aura immediately surged out from her body. Bai Zhan's expression also changed slightly. On the other hand, Xiao Yan hurriedly stopped Lang Bingshuang, who was about to go berserk, when his expression changed. Soon after, he looked towards Bai Zhan. When the latter saw the helpless expression on Xiao Yan's face, a smile that was not a smile quickly flashed across his face. After which, he continued to speak. I have come here this time to tell you a piece of news. I believe that this news should be extremely important to you. Bai Zhan smiled confidently. Under Xiao Yan's doubtful gaze, he opened his mouth once again. I wonder if Brother Xiao still remembers the withered leaf goo? Chapter 1089. Dry leaf goo. Bai Zhan's words had just left his mouth when Xiao Yan's expression slightly changed. He naturally remembered that item clearly. Dry leaf goo was Yi Luotian's unique method. It could refine a goo into the shape of a pill. Although its effects were no different from the extreme transformation pill, the difference was that the dry leaf goo would poison a person's body. Anyone who swallowed the dry leaf goo would be under Yi Luotian's control. Anyone who disobeyed would suffer unbearable agony with a single thought. Hence, anyone who swallowed the dry leaf goo would be under Yi Luotian's command for the rest of their lives. But what was Bai Zhan's motive for saying these words? Haha, looks like Brother Xiao still remembers. I believe there is no need for me to explain the effects of this dry leaf goo. Anyone who consumes it will be under Yi Luotian's control. The moment these words were spoken, the expressions of the few people behind Xiao Yan immediately changed. Tian Ying and the rest also swiftly recalled the terrifying scene they had witnessed back then. However, he was able to kill someone with just a thought. Such a method could be said to be shocking. However, there is one exception, and that is you. Brother Xiao, you had also swallowed the dry leaf goo back then. Not only did you not fall under Yi Luotian's control, you even borrowed the dry leaf goo's effects to successfully raise your cultivation. I believe Brother Xiao has not forgotten about this matter. The moment Bai Zhan's words faded, Tian Ying and the rest behind Xiao Yan swiftly recalled the incident. Indeed, although the dry leaf goo was terrifying, it was unable to do anything in front of Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. This caused Yi Luotian to have the opposite effect and personally raise Xiao Yan's cultivation. When Tian Ying and the rest recounted the incident back then, the little fairy doctor and the rest could not help but chuckle. However, Xiao Yan's gaze was focused on Bai Zhan from beginning to end. Brother Bai Zhan, if you have anything to say, please speak frankly. Upon hearing this, the latter could not help but raise his eyebrows. Soon after, he pursed his lips into a smile and said, Since that is the case, I shall not speak any further. My purpose for coming here this time is mainly to tell Brother Xiao that although the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley has been continuously expanding over the years, The one who is truly difficult to deal with is not Xianxia, but Yi Luotian. During these years, he has relied on the withered leaf goo to secretly control experts. Most of those who were given medicinal pills by him in the name of saving lives have fallen under his control. As for those who did not listen to his orders, they were killed by him. Now, the number of people under his control is innumerable. Among them, there are over 30 Do-D experts. Among them, there is even an origin transformation expert. The expression on the faces of Xiao Yan's group suddenly changed drastically when these words were uttered. The enormous rock in their hearts, which was originally considered calm, suddenly sank a little, causing the breathing of these few people to involuntarily become rough. What they currently knew was merely the foundation of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley's strength. As for Yi Luotian, other than Xiao Yan's baseless guess, there was no other news. However, Bai Zhan's words could be considered as a heavy blow to Xiao Yan and the rest. Over 30 Do-D experts, one origin transformation expert, Yi Luotian, Qin Shua, the other 2 origin transformation experts in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, and the 50 Do-D that they currently possessed on the surface. This also meant that the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley possessed 5 origin transformation experts and 80 Do-D experts. Such a lineup could be said to be terrifying. However, the thing that Xiao Yan was most worried about was still the people from the Ghost Hall. There was no doubt that the people from the Ghost Hall would participate in this battle. Once the Ghost Hall also dispatched origin transformation experts to reinforce the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, the chances of victory for the Xiao Gate would be greatly reduced. It was unexpected that the situation between the Xiao Gate and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley had unknowingly become so dangerous. If they were the slightest bit careless, Xiao Yan and the Xiao Gate would be consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, if Xiao Yan was completely unaware of all this, the result would perhaps be very difficult to fathom. However, Bai Zhan's appearance seemed to have unknowingly disrupted the Qin Wasteland Maze Valleys, or perhaps Yi Luotian's, arrangements. Xiao Yan's pitch-black eyes flashed. He immediately raised his head and his gaze met Bai Zhan's. The two of them tacitly smiled at the same time. Lang Bingshuang and the rest also raised their eyebrows, appearing to be deep in thought. Since those people were under Yi Luotian's control because of the dry leaf goo, it was likely that none of them were willing to sincerely work for Yi Luotian. In other words, if Xiao Yan was able to use the heavenly flame to remove the dry leaf goo in their bodies, the 30 over Do-D and origin transformation experts under Yi Luotian would naturally cease to exist once these people regained their freedom. At that time, the Xiao Gate would naturally have a higher chance of victory in the battle in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Now, what Xiao Yan needed to do was to think of a way to rescue those 30 over people under Yi Luotian's nose. Although I am very grateful for you telling me all this, I still really want to know why you are telling me such important information? Xiao Yan withdrew his thoughts. His gaze once again landed on Bai Zhan as he asked with a serious expression. He, just treat it as repayment for Brother Xiao saving my father back then. Bai Zhan's eyes flickered faintly as he smiled faintly. It's that simple? When 2 tigers fight, one will definitely be injured. But if the result is that both sides are injured, Brother Bai Zhan. Xiao Yan stared intently at Bai Zhan. Behind him, Lang Bingshuang and Kai also began to circulate the Genesis Qi in their bodies. Bai Zhan naturally sensed this. His heart tightened, but he did not do anything. He paused for a moment before smiling. Brother Xiao is worrying too much. Don't tell me that Brother Xiao doesn't even have a little bit of trust in my Bai clan after working together so many times? I don't think there's a need for me to explain what happened before and what happened after. This time, Xiao Yan did not joke around. A single sentence from him caused Bai Zhan's expression to abruptly change as his gaze involuntarily swept across Lang Bingshuang and Kai. However, I am still very grateful for Brother Bai Zhan's information. No matter what your motive is, this information is extremely important to me. If there is nothing else, I believe that Brother Bai Zhan should return. I'm afraid that you will not be used to staying here. Xiao Yan cupped his hands in a heavy manner. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yan did not make things difficult for Bai Zhan. Instead, he purposely found a way out for the latter. Bai Zhan also responded immediately. He turned around and left. He did not pause even a little. However, not long after Bai Zhan had walked out, Xiao Yan suddenly opened his mouth and spoke loudly from behind. Brother Bai, I, Xiao Yan, am not an ungrateful person. However, if anyone tries to ride on my head, I will not hesitate to eliminate them. Hence, I hope that we can always talk face to face. Bai Zhan's pupils abruptly shrank when he heard these words. His body quickly accelerated, dashing out of the Shilin mountain range at an astonishing speed. At the same time, in a distant mountain forest, the expression of a figure in white robes abruptly changed when he heard the mighty voice. Shock involuntarily flowed out from his eyes. This person was the head of the Bai clan, Bai Zhan's father, Bai Ying. Chapter 1090. After Bai Zhan left, Xiaoyan swiftly discussed the authenticity of this matter with Langbing Shuang and the others. Finally, everyone's opinion was the same. They would rather believe the information that Bai Zhan had provided than not. Hence, Xiaoyan's group was bound to head to the western wastelands. According to the information that Bai Zhan had provided, the 30 elite Dodi were secretly hidden by Yi Luotian in a small valley called the Flat Mountain West Call outside of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. As this was Yi Luotian's own trump card, he did not hand these people over to Qin Shua. Hence, the existence of these people was an extremely secretive piece of information. It was almost impossible for outsiders to know about it. Moreover, in order to not attract any attention, there were only 6 people guarding the western call of the Flat Mountain. These 6 people were all high-class Dodi. Although there were only 6 elite Dodi, the Do-Chi of the people in the Flat Mountain West Call had already been sealed by Yi Luotian's order due to the withered leaf goo. Hence, the people inside did not have any means to resist. If anyone did not comply, they would be directly killed by these 6 people. However, on the whole, this kind of mission could not be considered troublesome for Xiaoyan. With his strength, dealing with 6 elite Dodi was extremely easy. Although this was the case, the little fairy doctor and the rest still held a doubtful attitude toward this mission. How could there be such an easy task in this world? A faction that could sweep through the entire western region actually only sent 6 elite Dodi to guard it. This was too much of a joke. However, this time around, Xiaoyan chose to believe unconditionally. He believed the information that Bai Zhan had provided. He believed that there were only 6 elite Dodi guarding the place. He even believed that there would not be any trouble on this trip. Finally, under the insistence of the little fairy doctor and the rest, Xiaoyan continued on his journey alone. Langbing Shuang and the rest were entrusted by Xiaoyan to guard the Shilin mountain range and block their path. Additionally, with Xiaoyan's speed, it was very difficult for them to catch up even if they wanted to. That day, Xiaoyan headed to the western wastelands alone. By noon the next day, he had already arrived at the boundary of the western wastelands. Once again arriving at this place, Xiaoyan could not help but sigh in his heart. However, after that, it was another boring journey. Following the map, Xiaoyan quickly found the so-called Flat Mountain West Kernel in the vast desert. 2 sand dunes sat in the cold wind. Desolate sand came from afar, was blocked and swirled around these 2 sand dunes. Finally, it became a part of the sand dunes. Solid rocks and soil stood majestically, as if there were armored soldiers standing in the middle of the desert. The special environment between heaven and earth created this place. In the gap between 2 sand dunes, due to the special environment, the wind and sand swirled around the gap for a while before returning to the sand dunes. This caused more and more sand to accumulate and the sand dunes to gradually rise. At the same time, the gap between the 2 sand dunes naturally formed another space. This was the Flat Mountain West Kernel. The narrow entrance was so small that only 3 people could enter at the same time. Only after several hundred feet did the space within gradually become wider. There was no way to go any deeper. This Flat Mountain West Call was actually a fatal spot. It was indeed a good place to kill and rob. Under the investigation of Xiaoyan's spiritual strength, there were indeed only 6 high-class Dodi in this Flat Mountain West Call, other than a group of people whose cultivations had been sealed. These 6 people were all 9-star Dodi. From the looks of it, Yi Luotian had indeed put in a lot of effort in order to guard this group of people. Thinking of this, Xiaoyan, who was in the outside world, could not help but smile coldly. 6 9-star Dodi. This kind of lineup could indeed be described as powerful on the surface. Unfortunately, there was too much of a difference in front of an origin transformation expert. With a flick of his finger, a strange dark black energy suddenly agglomerated in the empty space in front of him. In an instant, it turned into a dark black curtain. After which, Xiaoyan took a step forward and his entire body disappeared from the sky in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! Almost at the same time, in the depths of the western call of the Flat Mountain, a human figure suddenly appeared out of thin air in front of the 6 people who were originally sitting cross-legged. The sudden change caused the 6 people, who were sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, to suddenly leap up. The expressions on their faces changed drastically. As 9-star Do-D, there were very few people who could arrive in front of them without them noticing. Hence, there was no need to doubt the strength of the person who had arrived. "May I know who you are? Why have you come here?" While the 6 of them retreated, their respectful voices were emitted. After all, there was no doubt that the person they were facing was an origin transformation expert. If they did not treat him with respect, there would be great trouble. "I am Xiao Yan. I have specially come to ask for something from the 6 of you." Xiao Yan parted his mouth and coldly smiled. At the same time, his body suddenly rushed forward. His movement was like lightning as both of his hands were clenched into fists and he faced the 6 people. "Ask for something? Xiao Yan? Xiao Yan. You are Xiao Yan." However, by the time the 6 of them reacted, Xiao Yan's body had already appeared in front of the 6 of them in a ghost-like manner. His fist was thrown out like the wind. Before they could maneuver the Do-Chi in their bodies, Xiao Yan's fist had already landed on their chests. Bang 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 bang. With 6 consecutive punches, the 6 9-star Do-D were killed by Xiao Yan at lightning speed. The appearance of this scene caused everyone to truly feel the gap between an elite Do-D and an origin transformation expert. In front of the latter, even a 9-star Do-D was no match for him. Xiao Yan finished off these 6 9-star Do-D in a lightning-like manner. Soon after, his body appeared deep within the western col of the flat mountain. A special restriction had been placed in this place. Those 30-plus experts were sealed within this restriction. Although this seal was not a formation, Xiao Yan could clearly sense that it contained Yiluotian's aura. If an outsider were to forcefully attack this western col, even if they could get past the 6 9-star Do-D outside, they would immediately be discovered by Yiluotian if they touched this seal. It seemed that in order to ensure that nothing unexpected would happen here, Yiluotian had not only chosen to hide these people in the western col, which was relatively close to the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley, but he had also used this seal to ensure that he was connected to this place. This was to ensure that he would be able to take care of this place in time if someone were to forcefully attack. Unfortunately, although this seal was related to Yiluotian, Xiao Yan, who possessed the Great Way of the Void, could easily avoid being discovered by him. "Ha ha!" The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was lifted into a cold smile. He quickly raised his hand and formed a seal with his 10 fingers. At the same time, the dark black curtain once again condensed in front of him. Additionally, the power of the Great Way was also condensed in the space behind the seal. Soon after, Xiao Yan's body entered it. The moment he entered, Xiao Yan saw a group of people with cautious expressions. When Xiao Yan's gaze swept over them, he was surprised to discover that there was actually an expert he had seen before. At the same time, this person was the only origin transformation expert among the 30-plus people. This person was one of the top 3 experts in the western region. Lu Zhongtian. Chapter 1091. Shilin Region, Green Hunchback Mountain, the former site of the 4 great sections. At the peak of the mountain, layers of buildings were being rebuilt at an astonishing speed. The entire Green Hunchback Mountain looked brand new in a short period of time. Somewhere on the cliff, 2 figures in white robes stood side by side. These 2 people were actually Bai Ying and Bai Zhan, father and son. Ever since Xiao Yan and the others destroyed the remaining forces in Green Hunchback Mountain a few days ago, the Bai clan had taken advantage of this opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Although Green Hunchback Mountain was only the former site of the 4 great sects, the treasures within were still unimaginable to outsiders. With the Bai clan's manpower, they had obtained all the remaining resources of the 4 great sections. To them, this was considered a large sum. Of course, to them, the most valuable thing was still Green Hunchback Mountain. Now, Yiluotian had already brought his people and merged with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Green Hunchback Mountain was already an ownerless land. As the resource-rich Green Hunchback Mountain in Shilin region, once they could occupy it, the resources within would be enough to support them to become the next superpower. "Father, do you think Xiao Yan will save them?" Bai Ying and his father stood with their hands behind their backs as they gazed at the vast Shilin region and the boundless mountain range. At a certain moment, Bai Zhan could not help but ask out of curiosity. He will definitely go." Bai Ying smiled faintly as a somewhat confident smile appeared on his face. Seeing this, Bai Zhan was even more so. The father and son looked at each other and smiled. their eyes flickering with the same light of wisdom. "Father, what do you think of Xiaoyan? How do you think you compare to him?" In response to Bai Zhan's question, Bai Ying's words caused the former to be at a loss. Seeing this, Bai Ying could not help but sigh deeply as he said in a low voice, "I can only say that this person is not an enemy." At the same time, in the western wilderness region, on the west side of Flat Mountain, Xiaoyan stared at the middle-aged man in front of him in astonishment. Who would have thought that even this man would become Yi Luotian's prisoner? Lu Zhongtian was once known as one of the 3 peak experts of the western region. Although he was a 9-star Dodi, his cultivation was close to the origin transformation realm. His battle prowess was known as the strongest below the origin transformation realm. As for the other 2, Xiaoyan believed that they were Qin Shuo and Lang Bingshuang. However, Xiaoyan did not expect that he would be controlled by Yi Luotian even with his current cultivation. This really caused one to feel surprised. Seeing that the black-robed young man in front of him had actually called out his name, Lu Zhongtian could not help but reveal a disappointed expression. After Xiaoyan announced his name, shock immediately appeared on the faces of the people present, who were originally wary of him. Xiaoyan's name could be said to be known by everyone within the western region. This was especially the case for the big battle that was about to arrive a couple of days later. It had attracted the attention of a countless number of people. Although they were in the nest, they had also learned of this matter from the mouths of the 6 people outside. From this, one could tell just what kind of great reputation Xiaoyan currently possessed within the western region. Of course, all of this was the doing of Yi Luotian and the rest. Their goal was to let everyone in the western region see the defeat of the Xiao clan in the big battle a few days later. Once the Xiao clan was defeated, the other factions in the western region would naturally crumble from the bottom of their hearts. Controlling the western region in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley would be a piece of cake. In this battle, the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was not only after the Shilin mountain range. What they coveted was the entire western region. "Mr. Xiaoyan, the big battle between you and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley is imminent. Won't you be in danger if Yi Luotian discovers that you have come here alone?" Lu Zhongtian, who had recovered, hurriedly reminded Xiaoyan. At the same time, the faces of the people behind him involuntarily revealed a furious expression when they heard Yi Luotian's name. If it was not because of Yi Luotian, so many of them would not have been imprisoned in this place. A dignified elite Dodi was actually being imprisoned like a prisoner. This was really a great humiliation. "Cuckoo, everyone, relax. I have come here to rescue all of you and leave this place." Xiaoyan merely smiled when he heard this. His face was indifferent. However, everyone present could only helplessly smile bitterly at this. Escape. How could they not want to escape from this place? Unfortunately, even if they could escape, they would still be unable to escape from Yi Luotian's evil clutches. After swallowing the dry leaf goo, their lives were already in Yi Luotian's hands. If he wanted them to live, they would live. If he wanted them to die, they would die. The so-called Dodi was just like a joke. "Sigh, Mr. Xiaoyan, as you can see, it's not that we don't want to leave. However, it's a pity that we have been poisoned by Yi Luotian's dry leaf goo. Even if we leave this place, we will still be captured by him. I know that Mr. Xiaoyan has come here to prevent us from becoming Yi Luotian's helpers in the battle in a few days. Unfortunately, we are now under his control and even we are unable to control our own actions. Therefore, Mr. Xiaoyan, in order for us to regain our freedom and for the safety of the western region, you should kill us." Once these words were spoken, everyone's faces instantly revealed a trace of fear. However, in the end, they still sighed with heavy expressions. Indeed, the only way for them to break free from Yi Luotian's control was to kill all of them. "Cuckoo, Elder Lu's words are too serious. I am here to rescue all of you. How can I kill all of you? Don't worry. There is nothing in this world that is impossible. No matter how powerful Yi Luotian's dry leaf goo is, it does not mean that there is no way to break it." Xiaoyan pursed his lips into a smile, his face filled with confidence. Lu Zhongtian's expression was immediately startled when he saw the confident smile that was revealed on Xiaoyan's face. After which, everyone present saw Xiaoyan slowly raise his hand. A thought passed through his mind and a puff sound was heard. A cluster of pale blue flames appeared in Xiaoyan's palm. "This is a heavenly flame." The instant this flame appeared, everyone present could not help but cry out in surprise. Even Lu Zhongtian's face could not help but reveal a shocked expression. Soon after, they saw Xiaoyan's hand suddenly clench and the flame in his palm instantly exploded, splitting into numerous thumb-sized flames that stopped in front of everyone present. Looking at the tiny ball of flame floating in front of them, none of the people present dared to underestimate it. A heavenly flame was the most domineering force in the world. Even if it was only a small ball, its power was definitely not to be underestimated. Furthermore, the dou qi in their bodies had been completely sealed and they did not have the slightest bit of strength to resist the heavenly flame. If they were to come into contact with even the slightest bit of it, they would instantly lose their lives. Everyone, if you trust me, please swallow the flame in front of you. Once the heavenly flame enters your body, it will naturally remove the dry leaf goo in your body. At that time, Yiluotian's control over all of you will naturally disappear and everyone will regain their freedom. Once these words were spoken, although many of the people present were moved, they did not dare to open their mouths to swallow it. After all, the thing floating in front of them was a heavenly flame. If they were the slightest bit careless, only death awaited them. Who would dare to carelessly try? On the other hand, Lu Zhongtian could only grit his teeth when he saw that the person behind him was unmoved. He looked at Xiaoyan and nodded heavily. Soon after, he swallowed the floating flame in front of him. As soon as the heavenly flame entered his body, it rapidly spread out. Relying on the natural restraining effect of fire on plants, it rapidly burned away all the dry leaf goo in Lu Zhongtian's body in a short period of time. The moment the dry leaf goo was completely removed, the sealed Genesis Qi in Lu Zhongtian's body abruptly began to circulate, and his cultivation recovered. It's a success! My cultivation has recovered and the dry leaf goo has also been completely removed. Lu Zhongtian could not help but loudly cry out after recovering his cultivation. At the same time, a faint layer of Genesis Qi rose from the surface of his body. Sure enough, his initial origin transformation stage cultivation had been completely restored. With Lu Zhongtian at the front, everyone behind him was naturally excited. They did not hesitate to swallow the flame in front of them. Not long after, the 30-plus elite Dou Di present and Lu Zhongtian, who was at the initial stage of the origin transformation realm, completely recovered their cultivation. After everyone thanked Xiaoyan in unison, they all left Pingshan Mountain Pass through the Great Path of the Void under his lead. As such, one of Yiluotian's greatest trump cards had been neutralized by Xiaoyan. With this hidden danger removed, it was time to prepare for the official showdown in the Qin Desolate Maze Valley. Chapter 1092. Xiaoyan did not go straight back to the Shilin mountain range after leaving the western valley of the flat mountain. Instead, he turned and went to a city in the western wilderness. Distant Saint City, where the Alchemist Alliance of the Western region was located, was also one of the most prosperous cities in the western region. Xiaoyan went to Distant Saint City this time, hoping to use his relationship with the Alchemist Alliance to get their help in this war. Xiaoyan did not wait too long after arriving at Distant Saint City, but went directly to the headquarters of the Alchemist Alliance in the city. He hoped to see Shingon this time. If that was the case, he might be able to achieve his purpose of coming here. Xiaoyan arrived in front of the Alchemist Alliance. He looked at the enormous building in front of him and involuntarily felt a shock in his heart. It was indeed worthy of being the Alchemist Alliance. It was likely that no one in the entire western region would be able to afford such an extravagance. The building of the Alchemist Alliance was like a rugged mountain. The layers of buildings were high into the clouds, and the peak was so high that it reached the 9 heavens. The towering figure was like a huge beast standing in the city. There was a pill fragrance permeating the air from time to time, as if it was shrouded in clouds, making it look even more magnificent. The tall main gate stood in the city in a domineering manner. At this moment, Xiaoyan was standing in front of the gate. Looking at the 2 soldiers in black armor standing on both sides of the gate, Xiaoyan could not help but raise his eyebrows. The cultivation of these 2 people had actually reached the level of 3-star Dou Di. Letting a Dou Di guard the gate, this was probably something that even the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley could not do. The Alchemist Alliance was really rich and imposing. Then, Xiaoyan lifted his foot and was about to enter, but at this moment, the 2 soldiers suddenly took a step forward and stretched out their hands at the same time, blocking Xiaoyan's path. Mister, if you want to enter the Alchemist Alliance, you must first show the Alchemist badge granted by the Alliance, or the cultivation of the Origin Transformation Realm. Otherwise, no one is allowed to enter. 2 majestic and overbearing voices rang out at the same time, causing Xiaoyan, who had taken a step forward, to involuntarily take a step back. Only then did he understand. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to take out the alchemist badge that Han Dong had given him, Xiao Yan's side suddenly felt a wave of energy rushing over. Xiao Yan glanced from the corner of his eyes and saw a young man who was about to push open the door of the Alchemist Alliance. Xiao Yan frowned. His body moved slightly to the side and easily dodged the young man's action. At the same time, his body moved to the side as he looked at the latter with a solemn expression. Humph, where did this little brat come from? Can't you see that Grandmaster Zhao is here? You actually dare to block the door. Seeing the displeasure on Xiao Yan's face, the young man's face was filled with disdain. He coldly glanced at Xiao Yan before instantly turning his head. With a smile, he looked at an old man wearing alchemist robes behind him. The old man's figure was slightly stooped. Aside from his head, his entire body was covered by the alchemist robes. His old face was both withered and yellow, but it was also filled with vitality. The most eye-catching hooked nose was his greatest distinguishing feature. A pair of deeply sunken old eyes gave off a sharp light. Combined with his stooped body, he looked like a vulture, causing people to tremble in fear. Jia Ming, before we left, didn't I tell you not to get angry today? Do you want the people in the alliance to laugh at me? The old man spoke faintly. His gaze did not land on Xiao Yan from the beginning until the end. That young man called Jia Ming hurriedly smiled and nodded when he heard this. However, his face was filled with an unconcerned expression. This was only today. If it was any other day, why would this old man care about suppressing others? All right, let's go in, the old man indifferently said. Then, he slowly moved forward. When Jia Ming saw this, he hurriedly went forward to support him. As for the two soldiers who were blocking Xiao Yan's path, they hurriedly bowed and opened up a path for the two of them. Only when they saw the two of them enter the Alchemist Alliance did they shake their heads and withdraw their gazes. Clearly, even though they were clear about the nature of these two people, they were helpless. Soon after, Xiao Yan once again stepped forward. With a faint smile on his face, he took out the alchemist badge from his storage ring. When the two of them saw the badge, their faces immediately revealed a respectful expression. Xiao Yan also politely nodded his head and entered the Alchemist Alliance. When they saw Xiao Yan's figure enter, the two soldiers once again withdrew their gazes. They looked at each other and could not help but nod their heads. Their mouths were filled with amazement. Compared to the old man who had just entered, the current Xiao Yan far surpassed him in terms of age and behavior. Sometimes, one really could not judge a person based on his appearance. After entering the Alchemist Alliance, there were quite a number of people walking about in the spacious hall on the first floor. As for the two people who had just entered, they had already disappeared. After a few inquiries, Xiao Yan met a white-haired old man with a kind face in the hall on the first floor. The latter was the deacon of this place. He was in charge of guiding newcomers to the Alchemist Alliance for the first time. Haha, young friend, this old man is Han Dan. I heard you say that you have come to the Alliance this time to find the vice-chairman? Arriving in front of him, the old man's turbid eyes swept across Xiao Yan's body. A glint immediately flashed in the depths of his eyes. He immediately cupped his hands together and politely asked. That's right. This junior has come to the Alliance this time to find Vice-Chairman Han Dong. Hearing this, Xiao Yan did not dare to tarry and hurriedly cupped his hands together. With his cultivation, it was naturally not difficult for him to see that this old man was actually an origin transformation expert. He never imagined that even an ordinary-looking deacon in the Alchemist Alliance would possess such a cultivation. It was truly eye-catching. Haha, young friend, you may not know this, but the Alchemist Alliance has a special rule. Anyone who comes to the Alchemist Alliance for the first time can only request to see the person who invited them to the Alliance unless they have made an appointment beforehand. Thus, I'm sorry, but I wonder if you can show me your alchemist badge before you enter? Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the old man's face did not show much surprise. He had met far too many people who wanted to see the president. However, rules were rules and no one could change them. Xiao Yan could not help but be surprised by this. He never imagined that it would be so difficult to meet someone in the Alchemist Alliance. However, he understood after thinking about it. The Alchemist Alliance had an extraordinary status on the continent. There were countless people who wanted to curry favor with the Alchemist Alliance. It was normal for the Alchemist Alliance to have such a rule. Afterward, Xiao Yan casually handed over the badge in his hand to the old man. He clearly understood that the name of the person who invited them would be clearly engraved on the back of every badge issued by the Alchemist Alliance. This method would save him a lot of trouble. Sure enough, when the old man saw the two words Han Dong engraved on the back of the badge, shock immediately appeared on his face. He never imagined that the young man in front of him would actually be personally invited by Han Dong. However, since that was the case, he naturally had to bring Xiao Yan to see Han Dong. "Young friend, please follow me." The old man smiled amiably and led the way for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan also smiled and nodded. He took back the badge that the old man had returned. After which, he followed the old man upstairs to search for Han Dong. Chapter 1093. Very quickly, Xiao Yan arrived in front of a stone door under the guidance of the old man. Along the way, the white-haired old man continuously beat around the bush with Xiao Yan, trying to find out the latter's identity. After all, the black-robed young man was so young and was personally invited by the vice president. He did not believe that the black-robed young man in front of him was some nobody. Unfortunately, no matter how the old man interrogated, Xiao Yan still managed to answer him in a clever manner. From the beginning to the end, the old man was unable to get any useful information out of him. In the end, the two of them simply became quiet until they arrived in front of the stone door. There was a living room outside the stone door. It was fully furnished. At this moment, when Xiao Yan and Han Dan arrived, they discovered that Jia Ming and the old man, whom they had met outside the Alchemist Alliance, were also here. Moreover, from their appearance, they seemed to be waiting for something. When the two of them saw Xiao Yan and Han Dan arrive, they hurriedly stood up. The old man's gaze immediately landed on Han Dan. On the other hand, Jia Ming's gaze was fixed on Xiao Yan the moment he saw him. He frowned tightly and his heart was filled with suspicion. He could not understand why this young brat would appear here. "Haha, Deacon Han, why do you have the time to come here? Are you also here to look for the vice president?" Hearing this, Han Dan smiled faintly. His old eyes swept over the old man and said, "It's nothing. It's just that this young friend wants to meet the vice president, so I brought him here." Immediately after, the old man's gaze finally noticed Xiao Yan, who was beside Han Dan. He immediately frowned. He did not expect that it would be Xiao Yan, whom he had met once before. "Oh, so that's the case. I did not expect this young friend to be able to obtain the vice president's appreciation at such a young age. However, I'm sorry, I have an appointment with the vice president today. Therefore, I think you should come another day." The old man narrowed his eyes as he looked at Xiao Yan. His heart was a little surprised. He was naturally able to imagine the reason behind being personally led to this place by Han Dan. However, regardless of how one put it, he already had an agreement with the deputy chairman. It was impossible for him to give in because of any reason. Hearing this, Xiao Yan could not help but frown. If that was the case, it would be troublesome. However, Han Dan, who was beside him, grinned and said, "Grandmaster Zhao, even if that's the case, it's not up to you to decide who the vice president wants to meet. So, I think it's better to let the vice president choose for himself." As soon as these words came out, Master Zhao's face suddenly changed slightly, but then he laughed dryly, nodded, and didn't say anything more. After which, Han Dan left, leaving Xiao Yan and the other two seated opposite each other. "Haha, Mr. is indeed a young hero. You were invited to join the Alchemist Alliance at such a young age. Your future can be said to be limitless. Mister, you flatter me. I'm just lucky." Hearing this, Xiao Yan smiled faintly, which was considered a response. Seeing this, Jia Ming, who was beside the old man, immediately frowned. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by the old man. "I am Zhao Chuanchen, the chief alchemist of the Luli City's Alchemist Guild. Of course, after today, I am no longer one. I wonder where you are from?" Zhao Chuanchen's gaze carefully sized up Xiao Yan. He believed that since the other party was able to be personally invited by the vice president of the Alchemist Guild, then the black-robed young man in front of him was definitely not a nobody. "Xiao clan." After pondering for a moment, Xiao Yan indifferently replied with these two words. However, when Zhao Chuanchen and Jia Ming heard this, the two of them immediately frowned. They had lived in the western region for many years, but they had never heard of such a force. Could it be some unknown small sect? Thinking of this, the master and disciple immediately sneered in their hearts. Since he was someone who came from one of those small forces, then there was basically nothing to be afraid of. Even if the vice president, Han Dong, personally invited him to join the Alchemist Alliance, in front of a high-rank alchemist, a fledgling kid was simply unable to influence anything. Rolling his eyes, Zhao Chuanshen's gaze once again landed on Xiao Yan's body. He grinned and laughed. Little friend, to be honest, it's not that I want to make things difficult for you. It's just that today, I indeed have an appointment with the vice president, Han Dong, and I will definitely have to meet him. At that time, I'm afraid that the vice president won't have the time to entertain you. Therefore, in order to not embarrass the vice president, why don't you leave first and stay in the city for a day before coming to visit? At the same time these words were spat out, Zhao Chuanshen's pair of dark old eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. An invisible pressure came pouncing over. However, Xiao Yan ignored it as though it was nothing. Heh! With a sneer, Xiao Yan raised his eyes, stared at Zhao Chuanshen opposite him, and said in an indifferent tone, "From what I see, it's better for you to leave. Otherwise, the vice president will chase you away. If that's the case, I'm afraid that you won't be able to hold on to your old face. Brat, don't fail to appreciate my kindness. My teacher has rarely been so polite to others. Today, he is giving face to the vice president. Therefore, he is tolerating you. If you know what's good for you, you should leave this place as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me for chasing you away." Seeing that Xiao Yan was indifferent, Jia Ming, who was beside Zhao Chuanshen, immediately felt that an opportunity had arrived. At the same time that his body stood up, an imposing pressure that belonged to a 5-star Dodi instantly surged out from his body and charged directly at Xiao Yan. Humph. However, in the face of this imposing pressure, Xiao Yan merely snorted coldly. Similarly, an invisible force immediately swept out. It was like an invisible storm. Before Zhao Chuanshen could react, it sent Jia Ming flying and violently smashed into the wall behind him. Brat, don't go overboard when you do things. He is my disciple. By the time Zhao Chuanshen recovered, Jia Ming had already fallen to the ground with a pale face. His mouth repeatedly emitted a moaning sound. The former immediately turned his gaze that carried fury toward Xiao Yan as he angrily reprimanded. "Oh, that's right. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. The disciple deserves to be beaten. As the master, you deserve to be beaten even more." "What did you say?" After Xiao Yan's words fell, Zhao Chuanshen's mind immediately shook. However, before he could recover, Xiao Yan suddenly attacked and ruthlessly slapped Zhao Chuanshen across the air. In an instant, the latter did not have the chance to refute and his body fell to the ground with a loud bang. Subsequently, just as Xiao Yan was about to continue attacking, the tightly shut stone door in the depths of the hall slowly opened. At the same time, a somewhat familiar voice was emitted. "Xiao Yan, on account of this old man, let him off this time." Chapter 1094. At the same time that he heard that familiar voice, Xiao Yan's hand, which had just been lifted, paused. He smiled slightly and said, "Since the vice president has spoken, I naturally have to give him face. Haha, after not seeing you for a few years, I didn't expect you to be so different from before. Even I can't catch up to your cultivation. It's really like the new generation excels the old." The stone door opened, and an old man wearing an alchemist robe stepped out from behind the stone door. He looked at Xiao Yan with a kind smile on his face, and as he sized him up, his eyes were filled with amazement. Now, the black-robed young man in front of him had unknowingly become a person that even he could not help but sigh at. "President Han, after not seeing you for a few years, you are still as strong as ever." Turning towards Han Dong, Xiao Yan's face immediately revealed a thick smile. He hurriedly cupped his fists respectfully towards the former and said in a solemn tone, "Haha, that's enough. If you have anything to say, let's talk inside. This old man doesn't think that you came here just to catch up." With a light wave of his hand, Han Dong invited Xiao Yan into the stone door. Only after the stone door in front of him closed did Zhao Chuanshen crawl up from the ground with a heart full of fear. He recalled the conversation between Han Dong and Xiao Yan just now, especially when he thought of Xiao Yan's name. The fear in his old eyes immediately became even more intense. Xiao Yan. He's actually that Xiao Yan. With the fear in his heart, Zhao Chuanshen panicked and left the Alchemist Alliance with Jia Ming as if he was fleeing. At the same time, Xiao Yan and Han Dong also sat down in the brightly lit stone room. "I say, there are only a few days left before the 10-day deadline. But why do you still have the time to come here? After the two of them sat down, Han Dong casually poured a cup of tea for Xiao Yan and handed it to the latter. Xiao Yan received the tea in front of him, took a sip, and smiled. I came here at this time because I want to repay the president's kindness. However, I wonder if he is in the alliance right now? Hearing this, Han Dong could not help but look at Xiao Yan suspiciously. He did not think that the latter's purpose for coming here was really what he said. Haha, you're here for the embryonic phoenix pill, right? The president has already told me about it. Consider yourself lucky, kid. The president just returned not long ago and will be leaving the alliance again in a few days. If you came a few days later, I'm afraid you won't be able to see him. Han Dong laughed. Hearing this, Xiao Yan could not help but secretly let out a sigh of relief. If that was the case, it meant that he still had a chance. Ha 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 ha, kid, it seems like you still remember this old man. It was also at this moment that the tightly shut stone door opened once more. A slightly unkempt old man appeared before Xiao Yan and Han Dong. This person was the president of the Western Region Alchemist Alliance, Xingan. After not seeing him for a couple of years, Xingan still had that sloppy appearance from back then. However, the feeling that he gave off had changed for some unknown reason. When Xiao Yan's eyes landed on Xingan, the latter's face was filled with surprise as he sized Xiao Yan up. His heart felt extremely surprised. SSS. Brat, what kind of heavenly resources have you been eating these past few years? How has your cultivation advanced so quickly? You've already reached late origin transformation. Within a short couple of years, Xiao Yan's cultivation had leaped by a large margin compared to before. This really caused Xingan's heart to feel extremely shocked. Regardless of how great Xiao Yan's training talent was, it was impossible for him to raise his strength so quickly. Kid, you wouldn't have used some sort of evil secret technique, right? You have to understand that while those things can help you improve your cultivation, the disadvantages outweigh the advantages in the end. You absolutely can't treat your life as a joke. While he was shocked, Xingan could not help but link Xiao Yan's rapid increase in cultivation to some sort of evil secret technique. He even went so far as to step forward and examine Xiao Yan. However, Xiao Yan could not help but laugh at Xingan's rich imagination. He stood up and looked at Xingan with an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He clasped his hands respectfully and said, "Senior, please rest assured." "Senior, please be at ease. Junior's cultivation is absolutely steady, and it's absolutely impossible for me to rely on any unorthodox methods." "Are you telling the truth?" Even though that was the case, Xingan was still doubtful. After all, Xiao Yan's rate of increase in cultivation was just too exaggerated. It was very difficult for him not to be suspicious. If Senior still has any doubts, please feel free to make a move. You'll know once you give it a try. A confident smile rose from the corners of Xiao Yan's lips as he exchanged glances with Xingan. At the same time, the Genesis Qi in the vortex in his body began to circulate. Xingan could not help but raise his brows when he saw this. Soon after, he looked at Xiao Yan in interest as a glint flashed in the depths of his old eyes. Hee, since that's the case, I won't hold back." Xingan did not hold back either. He raised his hand and dense Genesis Qi immediately rose from his palm. By the side, Han Dong frowned when he saw this and made way for the two. Xingan, who was only a few steps away from Xiao Yan, suddenly moved. As he took a step forward, he sent a palm strike towards Xiao Yan's chest. Although Xiao Yan was already prepared, he was shocked to discover that Xingan was much faster than he had imagined. Xingan's speed had long surpassed the limits of an origin transformation expert. Return stage. Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, he came to a realization. No wonder Xiao Yan felt an indescribable sensation from Xingan's body. Xingan's cultivation had already broken through to the returnant stage. Xiao Yan did not dare to be negligent when he thought of this. A thought passed through his mind and the Genesis Qi in his body began to swiftly circulate. The Sky Extinction Step and the Wing Elephant Art were unleashed at the same time. Not only did Xiao Yan's speed increase, but even his overall movement and the maneuvering of his Genesis Qi had become much more agile. Xiao Yan swiftly raised his right hand in the face of the palm that was heading toward him. He opened his palm. A thought passed through his heart and a pale blue heavenly flame swiftly agglomerated in his palm. It collided head-on with Xingan's palm at the same time. Boom! Soon after, a muffled collision sound appeared. Xiaoyan's right arm involuntarily trembled. Immediately, an incomparably large force attacked him from the front, forcing him back in one go. Only after he took over a dozen steps back did his body shake. The remaining force on his body was completely removed. This was also because Xingan had held back. As the two clashed, Xiaoyan, who was at the late origin transformation realm and one of the strongest experts in the western region, could not even last a single exchange against Xingan. From this, one could imagine just how terrifying a returnance expert was. However, just as Xiaoyan steadied himself, Xingan withdrew his hand. Xingan's pupils abruptly shrank as he stared at the last wisp of extinguished blue flame in his hand. His heart was filled with surprise. With his eyesight, he was naturally able to tell that the wisp of flame was definitely a heavenly flame. However, based on his knowledge, among all the heavenly flames on the heavenly flame ranking, there did not seem to be any heavenly flame with a light blue flame. This caused him to be extremely shocked. However, at the same time, Xingan was certain that Xiaoyan's cultivation had not been obtained through unorthodox means. Although Xiaoyan was not his match in the previous clash, the power that the latter had erupted with was undoubtedly much greater than other experts of the same cultivation level. There was no need to doubt this. Good kid, your cultivation is much thicker than I imagined. Looks like you've had quite a few miraculous encounters over the past few years. Xingan clicked his tongue and exclaimed at Xiaoyan after recovering. The latter smiled in a non-committal manner upon hearing this. He withdrew the Genesis Chi that had been released from his body. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in Xiaoyan's hand. Elder, this is the third pill that this junior owes you, the embryonic phoenix pill. Upon seeing the jade bottle that Xiaoyan handed to him, Xingan's expression was first slightly stunned. Soon after, a satisfied smile appeared on his face as he laughed heartily. Good kid. You still remember what you owe me. Since that is the case, I shall accept it. Xingan received the jade bottle from Xiaoyan's hand without any courtesy. He roughly glanced at it and a surprised glint flashed across his old eyes. Only after which did he store the medicinal pill into his storage ring. His eyes once again landed on Xiaoyan. Little one, it seems that not only has your cultivation soared over the past few years, even your alchemy skills have never fallen behind. From what I can see, your current spiritual strength is likely comparable to a rank 5 alchemist. With the help of a heavenly flame, the quality of the pills you refine is indeed extraordinary. Xiaoyan smiled awkwardly when he heard this. Did this old man think that this medicinal pill was something that he had recently refined? However, he did not know just what kind of expression Xingan would reveal if he learned that this medicinal pill was something that Xiaoyan had refined when he had first entered the Northern Sea. All right, I've already accepted the pill. You should tell me why you've come to the Alchemist Alliance. Han Dong's gaze instantly returned to Xiaoyan when these words were uttered. Xingan and Han Dong did not believe that Xiaoyan's purpose in coming to the Alchemist Alliance was as simple as returning the pill. Given the current situation in the Western region, most forces were maintaining a wait-and-see attitude, and the Alchemist Alliance was no exception. There was only one reason why Xiaoyan had come to them at this time. Since the two seniors have asked, then I shall not beat around the bush. I'm here to invite the Alchemist Alliance to cooperate and join forces. However, before Xiaoyan's voice died away, Xingan frowned and raised his hand, motioning for Xiaoyan to stop. Xiaoyan, you should know that our Alchemist Alliance belongs to the Pill Tower in the Central Region. Although our forces are all over the continent, we cannot get involved in the battle between the regional forces. This is also the reason why the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley is so arrogant and domineering in the Western region, but has never set foot in distant Saint City. He is not only afraid of the Pill Tower behind the Alchemist Alliance, but also does not want to provoke us to get involved in their dispute for any reason. I hope you can understand this. So sorry, we have no reason to get involved in the battle between you and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Chapter 1095. Xing Qian's words basically represented the Alchemist Alliance in rejecting Xiaoyan. This also meant that the Alchemist Alliance would never get involved in this matter no matter how Xiaoyan invited them. Xiaoyan could not help but frown helplessly when he thought of that. Since Xing Qian had already said that, there was obviously no need for him to say anything more. Of course. Although we are unable to send anyone to help you, you are still a member of our Alchemist Alliance. The face of a member of our alchemist alliance naturally has to be taken care of by us. Keep this medicinal pill. Perhaps there will be a time when you will need it. Xinggan's eyes rotated when he noticed the helpless expression that Xiao Yan revealed on his face. Immediately, he took out a jade bottle from his storage ring. There was also a medicinal pill within it. However, just from the fact that Xinggan had taken it out, this medicinal pill was definitely not something that an ordinary medicinal pill could compare with. At the very least, Xiao Yan did not think that he currently possessed any medicinal pill with a value that could compare with this. Class 6 pill. The Dragon Bone Pill. It can greatly increase your cultivation in a short amount of time. The side effects are basically negligible. Once the medicinal effects are too great, the user will fall into a deep sleep for an hour. It's just a pity that refining this pill is rather complicated. Even I only have one. I hope it'll be of use to you. Xinggan's voice was transmitted into Xiao Yan's ears when he extended his hand to receive the medicinal pill. A surprised glint immediately surged into Xiao Yan's eyes when he heard the words Tier 6 medicinal pill. It was unexpected that Xinggan would take out a Tier 6 medicinal pill. Soon after, his heart was shocked when he heard about the medicinal effects of this Dragon Bone Pill. Being able to greatly increase the cultivation of an origin transformation expert within a short period of time. Just this point alone was already sufficiently shocking. This Dragon Bone Pill was indeed worthy of being a Tier 6 medicinal pill. If there were a couple more of them, Xiao Yan was confident that he would be able to finish off Yi Luotian's group by himself. With Xiao Yan's current cultivation, the Dragon Bone Pill could allow him to reach returnance in a short amount of time. If there were a few more, the effects would be unimaginable. Brat, don't think too much about it. 4 pills like this that can increase cultivation, no matter how many you eat at once, only one pill will have an effect. Furthermore, although this Dragon Bone Pill doesn't have many side effects, because of its medicinal properties, consuming another Dragon Bone Pill within 3 months after consuming it will not have any effect. Instead, it will prolong the medicinal effects in your body, causing you to be unable to consume it again for a longer period of time in the future. Of course, if anyone is stubborn enough to refine it and make it work, only death awaits them. Xiao Yan immediately curled his lips when he heard what Xianxia had said. He looked away and quickly put the jade bottle away carefully. Only after that did he smile in an embarrassed manner. He obviously understood what Xianxia was saying, but it was just his imagination. All right, I still haven't asked you. What are your chances of victory in the battle against the Qin Wasteland Maze? According to what I know, the Qin Wasteland Maze has a total of 4 origin transformation experts, but you and the girl from the Shilin Mountain Range only have 2 origin transformation experts. Don't tell me you're placing all your hopes on my alchemist alliance? Xinggan's and Han Dong's faces immediately revealed a worried expression when they returned to the main topic. After all, this concerned a battle between origin transformation experts. Just the difference of one person could decide the outcome of the battle in an instant. Based on the current situation, the strength of Xiao Yan's side that he was aware of made it difficult for him not to worry. Haha, please do not worry, seniors. Whatever the Qin Wasteland Maze has, we will only have more than them. Moreover, from what I see, the true trouble in the battle against the Qin Wasteland Maze is not them but Yi Luotian. Xingqian and Han Dong relaxed slightly when they heard Xiao Yan's words, but soon after, they began to frown again. The two of them looked at each other and confusion involuntarily appeared in their eyes. It was obvious that they were not familiar with this Yi Luotian. Yi Luotian is the sect master of the Withered Leaf sect, one of the 4 great sects of the Shilin region. This person hides himself extremely well. Back in the ancient tomb of Heaven's End, he was the one who single-handedly finished off the other 2 sect masters of the 4 great sections. Afterwards, he even forcefully swallowed up the 4 great sects before allying with the Qin Wasteland Maze. SSS. Xiao Yan's simple explanation allowed the two of them to immediately understand the cause and effect of the changes in the western region over the past few years. From the looks of it, all these changes were caused by this Yi Luotian. After all, before Xiao Yan allied with the Qin Wasteland Maze, the latter had always kept a low profile and lived in seclusion in the western desolate region. In fact, many people in the entire western region had already gradually forgotten about this superfaction that had once dominated the entire western region. To think that this Yi Luotian actually has such means. With his strength alone, he is actually able to make the already hidden Qin Wasteland Maze appear once again. The two of them frowned as they looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. However, Xiao Yan gently shook his head in response. His words were filled with deep meaning as he spoke to Xing Qian. Senior, do you really believe that he alone is able to stir up such a storm in the western region? Aren't you overestimating him? Without waiting for the two of them to open their mouths to ask, Xiao Yan quickly continued. According to what I know in the western region, other than these factions that we already know, there are still other factions hidden in the dark. These factions are not originally from the western region, but have spread out from other provinces. Or rather, they are branches that have spread here. After Xiao Yan's words sounded, Xing Qian and Han Dong's eyes involuntarily flashed. Xiao Yan's eyelids slightly lowered, as if he did not notice anything. In reality, Xiao Yan had always been very clear about these so-called external factions. Regardless of whether it was the Alchemist Alliance, the Ghost Hall, or even the Union Pavilion and the Heavenly Clouds Auction House, he was very clear that these factions that he knew of all originated from the same place on the continent. The Middle Region. However, the current situation was still unclear. Xiao Yan was also unable to determine why they had spread their factions to the outskirts of the continent. However, he was certain that there was definitely some sort of hidden connection between these factions. Soon after, when the two of them regained their senses, Xiao Yan once again spoke. However, the words that came out of his mouth instantly caused the expressions of the two to change. The faction behind Yi Luotian is a faction from the Middle Region called the Ghost Hall. Chapter 1096. Ghost Hall. Xinggan and Han Dong's expressions abruptly changed when they heard Xiao Yan's words. Astonishment involuntarily surfaced in their eyes. They never imagined that Yi Luotian would actually be related to Ghost Hall. Soon after, the two of them once again exchanged glances. When they saw the astonishment in each other's eyes, the shock in their hearts became even more intense. Little fellow, are you certain that the faction supporting Yi Luotian is really Ghost Hall? Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan nodded his head with certainty. At the same time, he gave a rough description of the members of Ghost Hall. This time, Xinggan and Han Dong no longer had any doubts in their hearts. Even so, Xinggan still did not agree to Xiao Yan's suggestion of an alliance. Xiao Yan, your news has indeed shocked us. However, the rules of the alliance cannot be broken. You should return first. Xinggan frowned and pondered for a moment. Only then did he speak somewhat hesitantly. At the same time, Han Dong also swept his gaze over the two of them. His gaze quickly met Xinggan's before he nodded his head in an almost undetectable manner. Soon after, he spoke to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, why don't you return first? Of course, we also know that this matter is not as simple as it appears on the surface. To be safe, we can promise you that the alliance will continue to observe. If there is no other choice, we will definitely ensure your safety. The repeated persuasion from the two of them caused Xiao Yan to feel somewhat helpless. After expressing his thanks, he left on his own. After Xiao Yan left the stone room, the expressions of Xinggan's duo within the stone room instantly became grave. I really did not expect that they would actually participate in this matter. Moreover, from the looks of it, they seem to want to use the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley as a cover to secretly control the western region. Ghost Hall. It has been many years since there was any major news about them. To think that they actually want to swallow the western region the moment they appear. Their appetite is really big. At this moment, the two of them repeatedly thought about the battle between Xiao Yan and the Qin Desolate Maze. In particular, when they thought about the Ghost Hall, they felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Even they had little understanding of this strange faction. Although they were also from the Middle Region, the only thing they knew about the Ghost Hall was that it was from a faction called the Ghost Slaughtergate in the Middle Region. Moreover, Guild Leader, should we report this to the higher-ups? Han Dong suddenly said. Xing Qian pondered for a moment before shaking his head. It's better not to. The Ghost Palace in the Western region is acting strangely, but we don't know what the other regions are doing. Let's inform them first. It won't be too late to report to the higher-ups after we've investigated the reason behind this. After which, Han Dong nodded his head. The two people in the stone room once again descended into deep thought. At the same time, Xiao Yan was hurrying towards the Shilin region with a suspicious face. From the expressions on the faces of Xinggan and Han Dong earlier, they were also quite afraid of the Ghost Hall. Moreover, they seemed to be extremely shocked by the appearance of the people from the Ghost Hall. From this point, it was not difficult to guess that the Alchemist Alliance should have been secretly observing the actions of the Ghost Hall for a long time. There was also Luo Jin's group. The existence of these factions made Xiao Yan secretly associate them in his mind.
Their existence did not seem to be an extension of the faction.
Instead, it felt like they were restraining each other. Very quickly, Xiao Yan returned to the Shilin mountain range.
Seeing the former successfully return, the little fairy doctor and the rest in the mountain range could not help but secretly sigh in relief.
Among these people, the one who was most worried about Xiao Yan was Lang Shuang, whose beautiful face seemed to be ice cold. For some unknown reason, her heart was actually much more relaxed and joyful than the people around her when she saw Xiao Yan return. The stuffiness that had been suppressed in her chest had also loosened. When she recalled the first 2 days when Xiao Yan was not around, the black-robed figure with a smile on his face had also repeatedly surfaced in her mind. At the same time, the so-called hatred in the bottom of her heart had actually disappeared without her realizing it. After Xiao Yan returned to the Shilin mountain range, he began to swiftly reorganize his forces. On the 9th day, he led the group of experts behind him and headed towards Shahi shop. At the same time, the experts from all over the western region were using their personal actions to observe the big battle this time around. Before Xiao Yan and the rest could arrive, Sand River shop was already packed with people. Various tyrants and sects from various corners of the western region had gathered here. These people had all come for the battle between Xiao Yan and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. On the other side, the group from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley led by Qin Shua was already advancing towards Sand River shop. Among the entire group, only Yiluotian was not present.
This was because the latter was currently in the western valley of Flat Mountain.
The western valley of Flat Mountain. Yiluotian's expression was extremely ugly as he stared at the empty space in front of him.
After which, he glanced at the undamaged seal behind him.
His old face trembled with anger.
Yiluotian immediately understood that an origin transformation expert was responsible for the deaths of the 6 9-star Dodi in the outside world when he had just arrived. However, he was relieved to find that the restriction he had left in the depths of the Western Call was still intact.
This meant that the origin transformation expert must have seen through the restriction after killing the 6 Dodi's group and realized that there was something wrong with it. That person should have retreated in the face of difficulties. But what he didn't expect was that when he entered the space behind the restriction, he was stunned to find that although the restriction he set up was still there, and there were no signs of it being tampered with, the people inside, the more than 30 people who were crucial in this battle, were all missing at this moment. Not only had their auras not been left behind, even Yiluotian was unable to sense their connection with him. What's going on? What's going on? Who did it? Who did it? In the depths of the western valley of Flat Mountain, Yiluotian suddenly raised his head. A deafening roar was emitted from his throat as a powerful force swept out from his body. A terrifying destructive force had actually razed the western valley of Flat Mountain to the ground in an instant. Unfortunately, regardless of how furious he was at this moment, the 30-plus elite Dou Di and Lu Zhongtian among them were destined not to return. Time flowed by and it was already the 10th day of the agreed-upon meeting. When the sun rose from the east and reached the treetops, Xiao Yan's group arrived at Sand River shop. After so many years, he had arrived at this place again. However, it had already changed greatly. The first time he had come to Sand River shop was to escort Murong Qianxian. Unfortunately, he had stopped halfway. The second time, he had met Han Dong and the sect leaders of the 4 great sections. Back then, he had still been weak and needed the protection of others. However, in the blink of an eye, he had come to Sand River shop for the 3rd time. This time, Xiao Yan was already standing at the peak of the experts in the western region. At the same time, he held the fate of the western region in his hands. Chapter 1097. When Xiao Yan's group arrived at Shahipu, the people in the city immediately revealed shocked expressions when they saw this group of people. It was unexpected that there was actually such a large group hidden within the Shilin mountain range. With their eyesight, they were naturally able to tell that the weakest person in Xiao Yan's group was a 3-star Dou Di. There was naturally no need to mention the strongest person. Of course, it was that black-robed young man who was leading the group. The late stage of the origin transformation realm. Even in the entire western region, the only person who could contend against such a cultivation was probably Qin Shua from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. While the people in the city were shocked by Xiao Yan's cultivation, his young appearance also caused them to feel shocked. It was the first time they had seen such a young origin transformation expert after living for so many years. However, when these people saw Lang Bing Shuang, Kai Er, and the others standing beside Xiao Yan, the faces of a countless number of people were instantly petrified. Their eyes were filled with shock and despair. There was naturally no lack of old monsters in the crowd.
Although there were no origin transformation experts among them, they were still able to recognize the young people beside Xiao Yan with a single glance, as well as the burly bearded man with a curly beard.
The 5 of them were all origin transformation experts, especially Xiao Yan and the woman in an icy blue dress to his left. Their auras were so deep that no one dared to look directly at them. This Xiao Yan really is a heaven-defying figure. It's really hard to imagine. Not only is he young and promising, but even his friends are also heaven-defying little monsters. A total of 5 origin transformation experts. Heh, looks like the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley is going to be very unlucky this time. According to what I know, he only has 4 origin transformation experts in the entire Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. When the crowd saw the 5 origin transformation experts in Xiao Yan's group, quite a few of them immediately revealed expressions of schadenfreude. Quite a few of them even began to look forward to the start of the great battle.
Most of these people had come to watch the battle with the attitude of watching a show.
They only cared about who the final winner would be. They did not care about whether or not they would take action or which side they should help. This was the so-called opportunist. They did not have the ability or courage to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. There were many powerful organizations hidden in the western region. Although they did not have anything else, they at least knew their limits. Unless they did not want to live anymore. At noon, Xiao Yan's group was at ease as they waited for the arrival of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley in a spacious area of the city. They drank tea and laughed along the way, causing the people in the city to feel shocked. Now that the great battle was imminent, these people were actually in the mood to drink tea and make merry. Were they really not afraid of death? At a certain moment, Xiao Yan, who was seated in front of everyone, raised his eyes to look at the western horizon. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately stood up. His gaze swept across the members of the Xiao Gate behind him. When they sensed Xiao Yan's gaze, they immediately withdrew the smiles on their faces. Their gazes all landed on Xiao Yan. Haha, everyone, the great battle is imminent. I still say the same thing. I hope that when you fight with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, you will not have the attitude of casually sending us off. If not, towards the end, a coldness gradually flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes. A faint chilliness leaked out from his words, causing the hearts of everyone present to shiver slightly. This was especially the case when Xiao Yan's gaze swept across Fang Tonghui's group. The cold glint in his eyes caused their expressions to change slightly. Clearly, although Xiao Yan's words were said to everyone present, it was likely that half of the warning was for them. Haha, Chief, you can be rest assured. Since we are members of the Xiao Gate, it is our duty to go through fire and water for Chief. Today, no matter how many people come from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, we will just kill them all. Fang Tonghui was the first among the few of them to stand up. He looked at Xiao Yan. When he spoke, his gaze swept across all the members of the Xiao Gate present. When his words sounded, everyone present followed and cried out loudly. Such a scene was quite imposing. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan's face revealed a warm smile as he slowly said, "Naturally, this is a very good thing." Haha, this naturally couldn't be any better. As long as we work together to eliminate the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, the rewards that I promised everyone after the battle is over will naturally be delivered in full. When everyone heard the word rewards from Xiao Yan's mouth, a fiery expression immediately surfaced on their faces. Compared to the relationship between fellow disciples that Fang Tonghui had described earlier, from the way they saw it, only the rewards that Xiao Yan had mentioned were real things. Xiao Yan involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart in response to this. By the side, Murong Xian and the heaven-reaching giant ape could not help but be speechless in their hearts when they saw this scene. This was especially so for the heaven-reaching giant ape. After having personally witnessed Xiao Yan's tactics, he felt fear towards this seemingly young black-robed, young man from the bottom of his heart. After a round of intimidation, Xiao Yan immediately turned around once again. He raised his head and looked towards the western horizon. The corner of his mouth was lifted into an icy arc as he spoke faintly. "They're here." The moment these words were spoken, everyone behind him immediately stood up. They raised their heads and looked towards the western horizon. At the same time, a solemn expression appeared on their faces. The dou qi within their bodies began to circulate. Not long after, as expected, a vast and mighty group of people quickly flew over from the western horizon. Like a huge dark cloud, They enveloped the entire sky above Sand River Street.
Ha ha ha, Xiao Yan and you, Langbing Shuang, today is the day you die.
Just as the group arrived in the sky above Shahi Pai, Qin Shua, who was at the front, let out a loud roar. It caused the expressions of everyone in the city to change as they felt extreme fear in their hearts. Qin Shua was indeed worthy of being a terrifying existence at the peak of the advanced origin transformation stage.
Just a roar from him was filled with a frightening strength.
Ha ha, the situation has yet to be decided. Why speak so confidently? Are you not afraid of biting your tongue? Soon after, another clear laugh rang out. Xiao Yan's group also quickly flew into the sky and stood before the group from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Qin Shua's expression could not help but change slightly when he saw Xiao Yan's group of a few dozen people. No wonder Xiao Yan had asked him to wait for 10 days and bring so many people with him before the battle. It turned out that there was such a large faction behind Xiao Yan. When Xiao Yan's gaze swept across the group from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, sure enough, there were 3 origin transformation experts including Qin Shua. However, Yiluotian was missing. Xiao Yan's eyes immediately narrowed when he sensed this. Chapter 1098. What's going on? Yiluotian doesn't seem to be with their group. Do they have some sort of plan? Lang Bingshuang immediately frowned when she saw that Yiluotian was not with the group from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. She could not help but cry out in surprise. Perhaps. To them, it's an ingenious plan, but to me, it should be within my expectations. In comparison, Xiao Yan's face did not show much surprise. He should be able to roughly guess where Yiluotian had gone. While Xiao Yan was observing the group from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, Qin Shua's gaze also swept across the people beside Xiao Yan.
However, his heart could not help but sink when he sensed the auras of the 5 people.
He had never expected that Xiao Yan's side would actually have 5 origin transformation experts. At this moment, Qin Shua could not help but think of Yiluotian. That fellow had claimed that he had gone to gather reinforcements.
Why was he nowhere to be seen now that the battle was about to begin? Could it be that he had already sensed the strength of Xiao Yan's side and fled by himself?
Damn it, that bastard. I shouldn't have let him go so easily. When he thought of this, the pressure in Qin Shua's heart grew even heavier. If it was really as he thought, Yiluotian had escaped by himself and left this mess to him in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Wouldn't he be doomed? They were the ones who had issued the challenge. How could they just accept the challenge and not accept the challenge? Even if the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was willing to admit defeat, a battle would still be unavoidable. At this moment, Qin Shua could only hope that Yiluotian would not go back on his promise and not return. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to fight to the death with Xiao Yan's group with just the people behind him. Unknowingly, Xiao Yan's faction had already become much more terrifying than the Colossus of the Western region. Even though the number of Dodi was not as many as the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley, just a single origin transformation expert was enough to change the entire situation in an instant, let alone the fact that Xiao Yan's side had 2 more origin transformation experts. Ha 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 ha, Sect Master, since they've lost an origin transformation expert, why don't we use this opportunity to take action and finish them off in one go? Behind Xiao Yan, Feng Tonghui and Lu Cheng hurriedly stepped forward and spoke with sinister smiles on their faces. They wouldn't mind taking advantage of the situation. Of course, Xiao Yan wouldn't mind either. This was a battle between sections. To be honest, this kind of battle was inherently unfair. Why should they wait just because the other side had one less person? This kind of so-called waiting would only invisibly increase the pressure on their side.
All right, since this is the case now. Xiao Yan lifted his right hand and waved it violently after his words sounded.
Immediately, the group of people from Xiao Gate behind him moved and charged toward the group from the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. At the same time, the expressions of the people from the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley changed when they saw that Xiao Yan's group had actually taken the lead to attack. This was especially the case for Qin Shua, who involuntarily cursed.
Damn fellow, if you still don't appear, I will definitely tear you to pieces when I find you.
Soon after, Qin Shua led the people from the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley to attack Xiao Yan's group.
However, at this moment, a loud laughter was suddenly heard from the sky above where the 2 parties were about to fight.
Ha 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 ha, Valley Master. Are you really worried that I will run away? The expressions of the people from Xiao Gate and the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley all changed when the loud laughter rang out. Their charging figures came to a halt because of this. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the group of people who were slowly descending from the sky. At this moment, another group of people had descended from the sky in an extremely strange manner between the two groups of people. The leader of this group was Yiluotian, who had disappeared without a trace. At this moment, there was another group of people behind Yiluotian. There were not many people in this group. There were only 13 of them in total. However, the appearance of these 13 people caused Xiao Yan's expression to abruptly change drastically. The rock in his heart also instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. Other than the leader Yiluotian, this group of 14 also had 10 high-class Do-Di and 2 origin transformation experts. As for the black-robed person closest to Yiluotian, the strength of his cultivation caused Xiao Yan to feel a dense uneasiness in his heart. Returnance realm. Xiao Yan had clearly sensed this special feeling from Xingan of the Alchemist Alliance. It was a special feeling that surpassed that of an origin transformation expert.
There was no need to doubt that the person who had come was a returnance expert. As for these 13 people, there was no doubt that they were all from the Ghost Palace. At the place where they landed, other than the swirling black mist, there was also a wide black robe that covered their bodies, as well as a strange mask that was exposed to the air. It really is the Ghost Hall. On a mountain peak far away from the Sand River, Xingan and Han Dong were standing there, staring at the 3 forces in the city from afar. When the two of them saw the dozen or so black-robed men appear, their expressions became gloomy. President, the cultivation of the person at the front. It can't be wrong.
He's also a returnance expert. Xingan was stern as he slowly replied. Then should we take action? Han Dong's face tightened slightly when he heard that. He placed great importance on Xiao Yan. If he could help, he hoped that he could help him through this crisis. Let's watch first. Unless we have no other choice, let's not take action so easily. With that, Han Dong also nodded sternly. He fell silent and continued to stare at the situation in the city in the distance. At the same time, a group of black-robed people, whose appearances could not be clearly seen, were also standing on another mountain peak to the north.
Many pairs of golden eyes under the black robes were observing the scene in the city at this moment.
They were constantly vigilant.
On the chest area of their black robes, all of them wore a badge with the word Heaven written on it without exception.
Following the appearance of these 10+ people in the arena, the expressions of everyone on Xiao Yan's side changed drastically. 10 high-class Do-Di and 3 origin transformation experts had appeared. There was even a mysterious expert whose cultivation they could not identify among them. Once this lineup was added to the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, it was equivalent to 60 Do-Di, 6 origin transformation experts, and an extremely dangerous person whose strength was unknown. As a result, the difference between the Xiao Gate and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley had undergone a great reversal in the blink of an eye. The situation that had originally been advantageous to the Xiao Gate had become dangerous in an instant. Chapter 1099. Xiao Yan's expression was extremely solemn as he looked at the group of human figures standing in the empty space a short distance away from him. This was especially the case when his gaze swept over the black-robed person leading the group. His heart involuntarily trembled. The appearance of a returnance expert had turned the situation around in a single moment. The situation that had originally been advantageous to Xiao Yan's group was no longer present. Although the battle had yet to begin, the outcome of the battle seemed to be extremely obvious from the current situation. Whether it was in terms of origin transformation experts or Do-Di, the people from the Maze Valley of the Qin Wastelands were superior to Xiao Yan's group. With such a disadvantage, it was basically impossible for Xiao Yan's group to emerge victorious. Even the people from the Xiao sect behind Xiao Yan could not help but feel their hearts sink when they sensed this. Some of them even began to consider retreating. No matter how precious the pills were, they were not as important as their lives. It was impossible for a group of just over 40 people to fight against a sect that had almost 70 people. Not to mention, the difference in the number of experts between the two sides was extremely obvious. If they continued to fight, it would be no different from throwing their lives away. No matter how much they desired the extreme transformation pill, they would not go so far as to throw their lives away. Xiao Yan, TSK, I've heard of your name like thunder. After staying in the western region for so long, I've finally seen your true appearance. Just as both parties were silent, the black-robed leader beside Yiluotian suddenly shifted his gaze. A pair of scarlet eyes were revealed from the black fog. They stared intently at Xiao Yan on the opposite side like a poisonous snake. A strange laughter was emitted from his mouth. Heh, a group of things that are neither human nor ghost. I've already grown impatient from waiting for this day. I'll start with you first. Xiao Yan's eyes were extremely cold as he stared at the black-robed man. A dense killing intent appeared on his face. The moment his words sounded, his body shook and a pale blue flame soared with a bang, wrapping around Xiao Yan's body. The pair of scarlet eyes under the black robe involuntarily hardened when he saw this scene.
With his eyesight, he was naturally able to recognize that the flame that had adhered to Xiao Yan's body was definitely a heavenly flame.
However, the thing that surprised him was that the strength of the heavenly flame's aura did not originate from the Do-Chi continent. Instead, it came from the original heavenly flames on the Yuanwu continent, which had already transformed into spirits. Could it be the spirit of a heavenly flame? The expression of the black-robed man under his mask involuntarily changed when he sensed this. However, he could not help but frown when he once again checked the pale blue flame on Xiao Yan's body. If it was really the spirit of a heavenly flame, why was the color of the heavenly flame on Xiao Yan's body a pale blue color? According to his knowledge, there was no heavenly flame on the heavenly flame ranking that displayed such a color. Moreover, if Xiao Yan really possessed the spirit of a heavenly flame, why would he reveal such an expression when he saw them? That grave expression did not appear to be an act. Although he had guessed that Xiao Yan did not have the protection of a heavenly flame spirit, the black-robed man still felt some fear towards Xiao Yan. Even though Xiao Yan's cultivation was far inferior to his, the black-robed man had long heard of the former's terrifying battle prowess. Fighting against someone of a higher cultivation level was a common occurrence for him. Hence, even with his cultivation level, he could not help but feel somewhat worried when he fought against Xiao Yan this time. Humph, Yiluotan, I never imagined that you would actually mix around with this group of fellows. At this moment, a low and cold snort suddenly sounded from Qin Shua's mouth in another part of the square. As one of the overlords of the western region, Qin Shua had naturally heard of Ghost Palace. When he first saw these black-robed men, he immediately recognized their identities. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha, Valley Chief's words are wrong. How can we be called messing around? The reason why I have invited these few people here is because we have the same goal. You and I are here for Xiao Yan, and they are also here for Xiao Yan. As the saying goes, the enemy of an enemy is a friend. We are currently in a cooperative relationship. Valley Chief's words inevitably cause one to feel a little disappointed. However, Yiluotan merely smiled and shook his head in response to Qin Shua's cold snort. A cold glint flashed across the depths of his sinister old eyes as he laughed sinisterly. What nonsense cooperation! How can I allow others to interfere with the people that I want to deal with? Moreover, you better listen to the old me clearly. The people that the old me wants to kill are Xiao Yan and Langbing Shuang, not just him. You should also stop comparing the old me with these bastards. Tisk tsk tsk. Valley Master Qin, don't tell me you don't understand the situation from before. If we did not step in, do you think that you can deal with Xiao Yan with just the few of you in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley? If you really think that we are meddling in other people's business, that's fine too. We will leave now. At that time, let's see how your Qin Wasteland Maze Valley will fight with Xiao Yan. The black-robed person let out a strange laugh the instant Qin Shua's curse sounded. His scarlet eyes swept over Qin Shua's and Xiao Yan's groups while his mouth was filled with a cold smile. You! Qin Shua's old face involuntarily twitched when he heard the black-robed man's words. Even though he was unwilling to admit it in his heart, this was the truth. Without the help of this group of people, they would not be a match for Xiao Yan's group. After a long while, Qin Shua finally snorted unwillingly. Soon after, Yiluotian's gaze landed on him as he chuckled. Valley Master, instead of complaining here, why don't we take advantage of this opportunity to work together and eliminate Xiao Yan's group to prevent endless trouble in the future? Qin Shua's ferocious gaze immediately landed on Yiluotian when he heard these words. At the end of the day, all of this was caused by this fellow. Unfortunately, he had no other choice now. He could only deal with Xiao Yan first before discussing the matter between them. Everyone in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, listen up. Kill. Qin Shua waved his hand and pointed at Xiao Yan's group. Soon after, the group from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley behind him began to shout, kill. Their voices filled the sky as wave after wave of powerful auras intertwined in the sky. They were like a tsunami as they viciously pounced towards Xiao Yan's group. In the face of this astonishing scene, the faces of the group behind Xiao Yan turned pale. They were extremely shocked. The battle had only just begun,
Yet these people had already lost all will to fight. Kill.
However, it was also at this moment that a large group of people suddenly surged out from behind Xiao Yan's group. Dozens of human figures flew into the sky and charged towards everyone in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Murderous cries sounded from all directions.
Their strength was not the least bit inferior to the former.
Ha 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 ha. Brother Xiao Yan, back then, you saved us from the sea of bitterness. After that, they took the initiative to look for me. They hope that I can lead them to participate in today's big battle and lend you a hand. When Xiao Yan raised his head and looked over, it was likely that the number of experts who had arrived was no less than 40. While Xiao Yan was searching for the source of the sound, Lu Zhongtian's figure slowly landed in front of him. He cupped his hands together in an extremely respectful manner the moment he saw Xiao Yan. As for the group of people who were charging forward, they were naturally the group of elite Do-Di that Xiao Yan had saved in the western valley of Flat Mountain not long ago. However, the group today was clearly much larger than a few days ago. Chapter 1100. The sudden appearance of Lu Zhongtian and the group of elite Do-Di could be said to be timely assistance to Xiao Yan. The originally disadvantageous situation immediately stabilized with the addition of these people. The 40 people fought with the elite Do-Di from the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. It was difficult to determine a victor within a short period of time, and the battle situation immediately stabilized. Ha ha ha, Brother Lu is truly timely assistance. I will remember this matter and will definitely thank everyone after this matter is over. Lu Zhongtian's appearance caused Xiao Yan's heart to immediately relax. The burden on his shoulders seemed to have lightened significantly in an instant. He immediately cupped his hands together towards Lu Zhongtian, his face filled with gratitude. Ha ha. Brother Zhao's words are too serious. You were the one who saved us first. We are extremely honored to be able to help you. Ever since we left the mountain pass valley that day, they came to find me. I relied on my reputation in the western region to find some friends that I made back then. Unfortunately, I was only able to rope in 11 people. It is really true that a friend in need is a friend indeed. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan involuntarily nodded and sighed. The human heart was like this. Adding flowers to brocade might be valuable, but only by providing timely assistance would one be able to see a person's true feelings. This time around, Lu Zhongtian's actions would undoubtedly change the relationship between Xiao Yan and himself. So it was you, Xiao Yan. No wonder these fellows suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was all because of you. After hearing the conversation between Xiao Yan and Lu Zhongtian, Yiluotian, who was already extremely vexed over this matter, immediately understood. The one who had saved these people from the mountain pass valley was actually Xiao Yan. It was no wonder that his connection with the dry leaf goo in these people's bodies was severed. With the heavenly flame in his body, Xiao Yan could easily remove the dry leaf goo from his body. Xiao Yan and Lu Zhongtian coldly chuckled as they stared at Yiluotian, who was currently staring at the both of them with an extremely dark expression. Endless murderous intent surged in their eyes. It was likely that everyone present was determined to kill this bastard. At this moment, there might be a chance for the rest of the people present to survive, but Yiluotian would definitely die. You all should go as well. These people alone are no match for them. In the sky, the black-robed person glanced at the people who were fighting intensely in front of him. An expression of disdain flashed across his eyes. The role of an elite Do-Di in this battle was merely cannon fodder. Regardless of how many there were, the final deciding factor was still in the hands of these people. Or perhaps it could be said that it was in his hands. After all, origin transformation experts were nothing before a returnance expert. The 10 black-robed people nodded in response when the order was given. Their bodies immediately moved, transforming into rays of light that swiftly entered the group of people fighting in front of them. With the addition of these 10 elite Do-Di, the situation of the battle at the front immediately turned in favor of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Xiao Yan did not dare to be careless when he saw this scene. He raised his hand and waved it. The members of Xiao Gate behind him also charged forward with renewed confidence at this moment. With the addition of Lu Zhongtian's group, the situation between both parties was instantly leveled. In terms of the number of elite Do-Di, the Xiao Gate had over 10 more than the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Defeating the other party was merely a matter of time. Next, it was time for the official experts from both sides to fight. Hall Chief Luo, leave this brat to Valley Chief Qin and I to deal with. As long as you are able to. No, I want to personally exchange blows with Xiao Yan.
You are not worthy. Before Yi Luotian's words sounded, the black-robed person by the side suddenly let out a cold snort.
His words were filled with disdain. Yi Luotian's expression instantly changed when his words sounded. The black-robed person let out a cold snort when he saw this. I advise you not to have any thoughts that you should not have. Don't think that I am looking down on you. Your cultivation may be quite high, but from what I know, Xiao Yan has never been defeated by anyone of the same cultivation level. Even if the two of you join hands, it is impossible for you to be a match for him. Moreover, he also possesses a heavenly flame, and has an overwhelming advantage over your own affinity. I will not stop you if you wish to seek death. Even though Yi Luotian was extremely unwilling in his heart, he could only clench his teeth and remain silent after this ridicule. He had once exchanged blows with Xiao Yan and clearly understood just how powerful the latter was. He was definitely no match for him. However, the person in front of him actually said that he and Qin Shuo would not be a match for Xiao Yan even if they joined hands. This person was really underestimating the two of them.
Unfortunately, the person who was currently in control of the situation was the former and not him, Yi Luotian. Even he had no choice but to lower his head in front of this Hall Chief Luo.
Xiao Yan, allow me to deal with you.
As for the others, Hall Chief Yun first smiled ferociously as he glanced at Xiao Yan. After which, his gaze swept over the two black-robed people behind him. The two of them immediately nodded. Their bodies flashed and they stood in front of him. Soon after, Yi Luotian, Qin Shuo, and the rest followed close behind. 6 origin transformation experts blocked in front of Xiao Yan's group. Other than Xiao Yan, the other 5 all faced off against an origin transformation expert from the Lost Valley of the Qin Wasteland. Kai and the giant ape faced off against the 2 origin transformation experts from the Ghost Hall, while Lu Zhongtian and Murong Xian faced off against the 2 origin transformation experts from the Lost Valley of the Qin Wasteland. As for the Valley Master, he naturally faced off against his old enemy, Lang Bingshuang. At this moment, only Yi Luotian was still alone in the field. Keek. Valley Master, if the two of us work together, we will definitely be able to subdue this woman within 100 moves. Yi Luotian immediately let out a strange laugh when he saw that there was no one else present to obstruct him.
His sinister eyes then landed on Lang Bingshuang. Lang Bingshuang's expression immediately darkened when she sensed the gazes of the two. Her heart also became extremely heavy. Lang Bingshuang admitted that she did not possess the strength to face off against 2 experts of the same cultivation level. However, the situation was tense right now, so this was probably the only thing she could do. Boom!
However, it was also at this moment that Xiao Yan suddenly waved his sleeve and a black streak of light immediately shot out, heading straight for Yi Luotian.
The two had only clashed for a moment before the powerful force sent Yi Luotian flying. When everyone focused their gazes in shock, they saw a purple-gold metal body standing in the air. It indifferently stared at Yi Luotian as a murderous aura constantly surged from its body. A puppet! Everyone was shocked when they saw this. With their eyesight, they were naturally able to determine the strength of the puppet. Just from the previous attack, they could tell that its battle prowess was at least at the origin transformation stage. Soon after, everyone's gazes instantly landed on Xiao Yan, an origin transformation stage puppet. It seemed that Xiao Yan was not the only one with a hidden trump card. Even Yi Luotian had been hiding a portion of his strength. An origin transformation stage puppet was enough to change the outcome of the battle to a very large extent.
Kill him, Northern King.
Soon after, Xiao Yan's extremely cold voice rang out. The hovering Northern King indifferently responded with a hoarse voice. His body suddenly moved, turning into a streak of light that viciously collided with Yi Luotian in the blink of an eye. A great battle was about to erupt. Chapter 1101. When the Northern King and Yi Luotian clashed, Xiao Yan and the others all looked at their opponents. Very soon, Lang Bingshuang and the others clashed with the origin transformation experts on one side of the Maze Valley. At the same time, the 100 Do Di on the other side engaged in an intense battle as well. At this moment, only Xiao Yan and Hall Master Yun continued to stare at each other.
At this moment, the two of them clearly understood that regardless of whether it was the 100 Do Di or the 12 origin transformation experts from both sides, these people were not the core of this big battle.
There were only the two of them. The victory or defeat of Xiao Yan or Hall Chief Yun would completely break the stalemate of this big battle. The key to victory or defeat lay with these two people. TSK. Xiao Yan, Do you know that I've been impatiently waiting for this day for over 20 years? Ever since I heard about you, I've been tempted to personally capture you. Now that we've finally met, don't worry, I'll definitely bring you back this time. A pair of scarlet eyes stared at Xiao Yan like a venomous snake under the black robes. His voice was filled with viciousness. Humph, I've heard these words so many times that I've grown calluses. It's just a pity that you've never succeeded. Xiao Yan replied with a cold smile when he heard this. At the same time, he purposely extended his finger and pinched his ear. This scene caused the face under Hall Chief Yun's mask to twitch repeatedly. What shameless boasting. Today, I'd like to see just how capable the legendary Flame Emperor is. With a shout, Hall Master Yun's figure suddenly flashed. His terrifying speed made him seem like a phantom. The moment his figure vanished, Xiao Yan's expression instantly turned grave. Although that was what he said, his opponent was still a returnance expert after all. In terms of overall strength, Hall Master Yun was far superior to him in every aspect. If he dared to face him with a normal attitude, he would definitely have to pay a huge price. A thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind and the strength in his body immediately agglomerated. The wing elephant skill followed the momentum and the sky extinction step was also used without the slightest hesitation. A fierce, heavenly flame spread over Xiao Yan's body and protected him within it. The instant Xiao Yan's figure flashed, a chilling killing intent immediately surged from behind him. The sound of rushing wind rang out in Xiao Yan's ears, piercing his eardrums. In the next moment, a withered claw covered in Genesis Chi viciously tore through the space in front of it. Xiao Yan's figure had already vanished. Under the strange mask, a look of surprise appeared in a pair of scarlet-red eyes. Hall Master Yun had never imagined that an advanced origin transformation expert like Xiao Yan would be able to dodge his attack with his speed. Withdrawing his hand, Hall Master Yun narrowed his eyes as he looked at the trace of blood on the side of his little finger. The killing intent in his eyes grew even sharper. He suddenly turned his head and saw Xiao Yan wiping away the tiny trace of blood on the side of his face. At the same time, their gazes clashed once again. Humph, you can actually dodge my attack. How surprising. However, it ends here. After Hall Master Yun uttered these words, his body once again disappeared from the spot. However, Xiao Yan did not dodge this time. Instead, he swiftly lifted his hands and the Genesis Chi within his body rapidly circulated. A ferocious pale blue heavenly flame swiftly gathered above his head, swiftly forming a huge finger. Desolation Finger. Bone Claw. In an instant, Hall Master Yun's body once again appeared a short distance in front of Xiao Yan. At the same time, a layer of solidified Genesis Chi cuticle wrapped around her extended hand. Wave after wave of ruthless killing intent spread from it. A thin layer of blood fog also spread when it was formed. 5 sharp claws easily tore through the invisible space, and the biting cold aura made one's heart tremble. Boom! Soon after, the two powerful Do techniques violently collided together. A soul-stirring explosion immediately spread over the sand river. An energy storm swept over with it. Everyone in the city below had a drastic change in expression because of this soul-stirring attack. Even Lang Bingshuang, Qin Shua, and the others, who were currently engaged in an intense battle, could not help but turn their heads to look at Xiao Yan and Hall Chief Yun. After the storm scattered, the eyes of everyone in the sky and on the ground looked to the middle of the explosion. All they could see was Xiao Yan and Hall Chief Yun's sharp attacks violently colliding with each other. A muffled collision sound spread across the sky. Every punch struck flesh. Each strike was incomparably heavy. This kind of collision did not have too many fancy moves, nor did it require any skills. It was just a head-on collision using the most violent method. The outcome of this battle would depend on who could last the longest. Every part of their bodies that could come into contact with each other became their strongest weapons in such an intense collision. Whether it was their limbs, elbows, knees, chests, or backs, anything that could be used had become the fiercest weapon in the collision. His clothes were like metal, and his skin was like steel. The intense collision lasted for 15 minutes. During the entire process, the expression of the returnance expert under the mask was extremely ugly. The bright light in her scarlet eyes had dimmed slightly because of this. God damn it! Has this kid's body become so tough? My attacks can't harm him at all. When the fists of the two violently collided once again, Hall Chief Yun's body was miserably forced back by over a dozen steps. On the other hand, Xiao Yan's body stood in the empty air without moving. His skinny body hid a frightening dragon-like strength. The moment Hall Master Yun froze, Xiao Yan suddenly approached him. His face was extremely sharp, and he did not hide the killing intent in his eyes at all. He clenched his right hand into a fist, and terrifying force rapidly condensed. He directly threw a punch at Hall Master Yun's head. Even as a returnance expert, Hall Master Yun was not Xiao Yan's opponent in terms of physical strength. He had suffered greatly this time. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Yan's fist, which had smashed down, was only a couple of inches from Hall Chief Yun's head. The latter's heart trembled. Soon after, a roar that was filled with fury was suddenly emitted. "God damn it! Get out of my way, you brat!" A furious roar was emitted as Hall Master Yun suddenly rolled his sleeves. Surging Genesis Chi gathered, causing his black sleeves to become as hard as metal in an instant as they ruthlessly met Xiao Yan's fist that was descending from above. Clang! The sound of metal colliding rang out, and Hall Master Yun's expression turned fierce. However, just as Hall Master Yun was about to attack again, Xiao Yan's fist violently jerked, and an even more terrifying force surged out. Under Hall Master Yun's terrified gaze, the black sleeves wrapped in Genesis Chi were blasted to pieces. Chapter 1102. The moment the sleeve shattered, Xiao Yan's fist viciously slammed into Hall Master Yun's masked face. Although most of the force had been blocked by the Genesis Chi, the remaining force still distorted Hall Master Yun's face. Strangely, the mask that originally covered his face did not budge at all under Xiao Yan's fist. The mask flew out and was caught by Xiao Yan's hand. Hall Chief Yun's body continued to fly back. Only when he was hundreds of feet away did he stabilize his body while trembling all over. When he raised his head, a slightly distorted dark old face under the black robe was revealed. His deeply sunken eye sockets were scarlet, and the right half of his old face had turned purple. There were even traces of blood flowing out from it. The black robe he wore was already tattered, and his entire person was in a sorry state from the inside out. It was very difficult to believe that a returnance expert would be reduced to such a state from the attacks of an origin transformation expert. If any other person saw this, they would probably doubt the authenticity of his cultivation at returnance. Soon after, Hall Chief Yun's expression changed once again when he saw the mask in Xiao Yan's hand. The left side of his old face, which was filled with wrinkles, involuntarily twitched. The scarlet glow in his eyes, which had originally dimmed, suddenly surged. A ferocious killing intent wildly gathered in his heart. "Xiao Yan, die!" A somewhat hoarse roar was ruthlessly emitted from Hall Master Yun's throat like the roar of a ferocious beast. At the same time, the Genesis Chi within his body began to flow wildly. He waved his large hand and one could hear the ear-piercing sound of chains colliding. Soon after, numerous strange dark black chains suddenly shot out from behind Hall Master Yun. They were just like poisonous snakes as they penetrated through space and ruthlessly pierced toward Xiao Yan with lightning-like speed. Over a dozen chains appeared in front of Xiao Yan in the blink of an eye. Whooshing sounds continuously rang out as the sharp tips of the chains revolved around Xiao Yan, attacking him from every direction. Xiao Yan's expression sank when he saw this scene. He clenched his large hand and the dark black heavy Xian ruler appeared inch by inch under the wrapping of the heavenly flame. The moment the enormous ruler appeared in his hand, the 10+ chains had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan. Quickly following this, Xiao Yan swung his arm and the huge ruler in his hand danced. The wide and thick blade of the ruler violently sent the numerous dark black chains that were shooting toward him flying. Sparks shot out and clear, clang clang. Sounds of collisions sounded one after another. Within a couple of breaths, the 10+ chains surrounding Xiao Yan's body were all forced back. It was at this moment that Hall Master Yun's figure suddenly appeared behind Xiao Yan like a ghost. A ghostly hand viciously swiped towards Xiao Yan's head. "Die!" However, the moment Hall Chief Yun's claw landed, Xiao Yan, who was originally facing him, suddenly turned around in an extremely strange manner. At the same time, a fist, which was covered by purple gold scale armor, was suddenly swung out and violently collided with the former's ghost hand. Bang! The moment the two collided, they separated. The muffled sound of the collision was like muffled thunder. Hall Master Yun's body jerked and forcefully removed the force from his arm. On the other hand, Xiao Yan's figure was miserably pushed back dozens of steps. After which, he stabilized his body with a solemn expression. The moment he lifted his head, the heavenly fire filled his eyes.
The heavenly fire in his hand had already disappeared. Ha! Hall Master Yun could not help but exclaim in surprise when he sensed this. How could the heavy Xian ruler, which was clearly in Xiao Yan's hand a moment ago, suddenly disappear? 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. However, at this moment, a stern cry was suddenly heard from behind him. When Hall Master Yun turned his head to look, he saw that there was another Xiao Yan in the empty space not far behind him. This, however, before Hall Master Yun could ponder any further, the startling ruler glow that had merged into one had already arrived in front of him.
It was impossible to dodge. Chi. However, when the ruler glow ruthlessly struck Hall Master Yun's body, a strange scene suddenly appeared. A large cluster of extremely viscous liquid suddenly appeared in front of Hall Master Yun. At the same time, it formed a huge barrier that blocked Hall Master Yun behind it. The majestic ruler glow was completely blocked by the strange viscous liquid. The incomparably powerful ruler glow ruthlessly struck the cluster of viscous liquid. It was like a huge rock smashing into a swamp. Under Xiao Yan's shocked gaze, the ruler glow sank deeply. In the end, all the energy attached to the ruler glow was actually completely swallowed by the strange viscous liquid. Huff! After withdrawing the strange viscous liquid, Hall Master Yun's gaze landed on Xiao Yan, opposite him. At the same time, the surprise in his eyes gradually returned to normal. So it's just a clone, he said with a deep voice. Immediately after, Hall Master Yun's figure flashed and appeared in front of the clone in an instant. She extended her hand and slammed it into the clone's chest. At the same time, Xiao Yan on the other side hurriedly controlled his avatar and detonated the energy within his body. After Xiao Yan's cultivation had broken through to the origin transformation realm, the 9 clones remained at the level of Dou Emperors. Even when they fused together, the clone's strength was only at the level of a 9-star Dou Emperor. It was impossible for him to face Hall Master Yun, who was a returnance expert, with such strength. The sneak attack from behind was already the limit of what he could do. I'll make you explode. Seeing that the clone in front of her was about to self-destruct, a ruthless look suddenly flashed in Hall Master Yun's eyes. Her attack speed and strength became even more ferocious. Before the clone could react, her attack pierced through the latter's chest. Then, with a sudden jolt, a terrifying power suddenly poured out, shattering the clone. Afterwards, Hall Master Yun slowly turned around. His vicious gaze landed on Xiao Yan once again. Not bad. It's just a pity that your clone's cultivation is too low. Humph, he's not worthy to injure me, he coldly sneered. As he spoke, the strange viscous liquid from before appeared on the surface of Hall Master Yun's body once again. It crawled like a living creature and covered the surface of Hall Master Yun's body. No wonder. No wonder you were able to counterattack in that situation earlier. So it's because of the power of ways. Xiao Yan's expression also appeared calm when he heard this. However, there was an additional fear in his gaze when he looked at the strange sticky liquid on the surface of the former's body. With his eyesight, he could obviously tell that the strange liquid was a type of power of ways. However, he had never thought that Hall Master Yun's control over the power of ways had already reached such a level. Xiao Yan had to admit that he was unable to control the power of ways so well that he could wield them like an extension of his body. He had to admit that as a returnance expert, Hall Master Yun did have something he could be proud of. Humph, you're the first origin transformation expert I've seen to be able to make me use the power of ways. However, this is where it ends. Because my grand Tao of darkness will definitely engulf you in boundless darkness. In an instant, when Hall Master Yun's words left her mouth, a pitch-black viscous liquid spread out like a tide, completely enveloping the battlefield where the two of them were. The world around the two of them also became dark. Chapter 1103. In a strange dark space, a figure wrapped in light blue flames was standing in the middle. The blazing flames released bright light and scorching heat, causing the space around him to distort. Beneath the flames, a pair of eyes that also shone with light blue flames was carefully observing the space he was in. Surging soul power gushed out from his mind and spread out in all directions like a tide. He carefully explored the surrounding world inch by inch. The dark black space appeared like a night without any stars or moon. Wherever Xiao Yan's spiritual strength passed, there would be an endless darkness. The strangest thing was that the endless darkness contained an extremely strange strength. If Xiao Yan did not possess the protection of the heavenly flame, it was likely that an ordinary person would have difficulty barely surviving in this place, much less using their spiritual strength.
This is the great way of darkness? Beneath the flames, a pair of eyes flickered. A fierce look flashed in the depths of his eyes. It was indeed the great way of darkness. This great way of darkness was probably the most tyrannical great way of darkness that Xiaoyan had ever seen. Even his void great way was definitely inferior to it. Of course, a large part of the reason was due to the difference in cultivation between them. If it wasn't so, Xiaoyan definitely wouldn't be afraid of Hall Master Huang. However, the thing that surprised Xiaoyan the most was that after using his spiritual strength to investigate earlier, he was unable to find traces of Hall Chief Yun within this darkness. It was as though he had completely disappeared from this place. However, Xiaoyan clearly understood that it was impossible for Hall Chief Yun to leave this place if he wanted to use this method to unleash the strength of the Great Tao. Otherwise, the Great Tao of darkness that had trapped him would also disappear. However, since Hall Master Huang was in this strange space, why couldn't he sense his aura at all? This point caused Xiaoyan's heart to be extremely surprised. TSK 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 TSK. Xiaoyan, welcome to my domain of darkness. Here, I'll let you experience the full power of the Great Way of Darkness. However, it was also at this moment that Hall Master Yun's dark and sorrowful strange laughter suddenly sounded beside Xiaoyan's ear. The voice was so close that it appeared as though it was right next to his ear, causing Xiaoyan's mind to suddenly tremble. He subconsciously dodged to one side. At the same time, he flipped his hand and violently threw a punch in the opposite direction. The powerful force forcefully squeezed out a vacuum in this dense space. Chi! However, it was also at the next moment when Xiaoyan's fist was swung forward that a chi sound that penetrated through space suddenly sounded behind him. At the same time, a sharp, dark black spear tip that was as sharp as ink violently pierced toward Xiaoyan's waist from an extremely tricky angle. At such a close distance, Xiaoyan was unable to dodge it given his current condition. What? This sudden attack caused Xiaoyan's heart to be greatly startled. He did not have the time to do much. A thought passed through his mind and the flame on the surface of his body moved as he wished. It agglomerated into a heavenly flame armor in an instant. At the same time, the golden elephant skill was unleashed under the armor. A golden light protected his body. Adding the dragon phoenix ancient armor, this attack of Hall Chief Yun was blocked regardless of how tricky it was. Clang! When the heavy collision sounded, Xiaoyan's body couldn't help but tremble. His figure flew forward in a sorry state. Although the defense on his body had successfully blocked the impact of the strange spear tip, the tyrannical force still caused Xiaoyan's body, which was under the armor, to tremble in pain. Heh, a ghost that only knows how to secretly play tricks. What, is this all your so-called Great Tao of Darkness has? It seems that I have overestimated you. His body jerked, and as the Genesis Chi in his body circulated, the pain in Xiaoyan's body lessened significantly. Then, under the flames, a pair of ice-cold eyes swept across the strange space in front of him, and the corners of his mouth curved into a sinister smile. As his voice faded, Xiaoyan quickly lifted his hands. He clenched and released his hands, and two flames of completely different colors appeared in his palms. They were the bone-chilling fire and the sea heart flame. Then, under Hall Master Huang's horrified gaze, Xiaoyan fiercely clapped his hands together, and the two balls of flames in his hands were kneaded together. From the looks of it, Xiaoyan was preparing to condense the angry Buddha lotus flame. It was difficult for an ordinary attack to be effective against an opponent like Hall Chief Yun. Moreover, they were in this strange space that was covered by the Great Way of Darkness. Only by quickly resolving the Great Way of Darkness would Xiaoyan have more opportunities to exchange blows with Hall Chief Yun. Only by doing so would Xiaoyan be able to defeat him. Humph, kid. Don't underestimate others. I have specially prepared the Great Tao of Darkness for you. How can I let you easily condense that strange fire lotus? At this moment, the low and deep voice of Hall Chief Yun was once again transmitted over from the surrounding space. Soon after, a countless number of chi-chi air-splitting sounds appeared in the dark black space around Xiaoyan. Numerous energy forces violently pierced toward Xiaoyan. The powerful attacks caused one's eyes to be dazzled. It was difficult to imagine. Within a couple of breaths, the fire glow on the heavenly flame armor on Xiaoyan's body had become much dimmer. Great Tao of Darkness, swallow those flames. Hall Master Huang's sharp cry sounded. Waves of viscous liquid like Great Tao of Darkness followed and covered the armor that Xiaoyan was wearing. Immediately, a sizzling sound was emitted from the flames. At the same time,
A dense fog accompanied the sizzling sound. Adding the continuous attacks from the energy pillars, only a thin layer of the heavenly flame armor remained on Xiao Yan's body. It looked as though it would break apart at any moment. As for the flame between Xiao Yan's hands, it appeared that it was still an intense merger. However, it appeared that there was still a very long distance before it could truly merge. This point was completely different from the merger process that Xiao Yan had experienced in the past. Qi! At a certain moment, when the flame armor on Xiao Yan's body broke apart, Hall Master Huang's figure suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yan in an extremely strange manner. One of his hands turned into a claw and forcefully separated Xiao Yan's hands from his. The two types of flames between his palms also dissipated without any backlash. Let's see what other tricks you have without the fire lotus. Die! However, before Hall Master Huang could finish his last word, a heart-wrenching pain instantly caused his face to distort uncontrollably. An extremely terrifying force was viciously twisting his arm. Under that force, his entire arm seemed to be twisting violently, as though his bones were about to be broken. Ah! An extremely miserable roar erupted from Hall Master Yan's mouth. His other hand viciously grabbed the wrist of his injured arm, as if he wanted to resist the terrifying power. However, the more he exerted